I always thought I understood what fear was, but that night taught me I'd only ever brushed its edges. It wasn't the kind of fear that rushes in during a car accident or a sudden shout in the dark. It was slower, quieter, like smoke seeping under a locked door, filling the room before you even realize you're choking on it. My name is Rachel Hayes, and when this happened, I was living in Tucson, Arizona. The desert nights had that strange duality, chilly enough to sting your skin, but dry enough to leave your throat raw. I worked 2 jobs just to keep afloat: a graveyard security shift at a warehouse on the city's outskirts, and a waitress gig at a 24-hour diner downtown. Both drained me to the bone, but at least exhaustion kept my mind too busy to linger on the loneliness I dragged home with me every morning. That night started like countless others. I clocked out of the diner a little after 1:30 a.m., the neon lights humming and flickering against the empty streets as I walked out with my co-worker Lisa. She was 22, always tired, always talking about moving somewhere better but never having a plan. I'd promised her a ride home, and we stopped by a taco stand on the way. We didn't say much, just the kind of sleepy chatter people default to when they're too tired to be real. She got out near her apartment, and I remember thinking how quiet it was. So quiet, the sound of her closing the passenger door seemed to echo. By 1:50 a.m., I was pulling toward my own driveway when the fuel light blinked on. I muttered, "Damn it, not tonight," under my breath. I couldn't risk stalling the next morning, so I turned toward the nearest station, a small, half-forgotten one that sat just a block away. Its neon sign buzzed and glowed a sickly green, the light fractured in places where insects had died against the glass. The lot was empty. No cars, no people, not even the stray drifters you'd expect at that hour. Just harsh white floodlights overhead, casting long shadows across cracked concrete. Something about it unsettled me. It was the silence. It didn't feel like the usual empty stillness of 2 a.m. It felt expectant, like the world itself was holding its breath. I pulled up to the pump, shut off the car, and stepped out. The crunch of gravel under my shoes sounded deafening in the quiet. That was when I caught it, a flicker of movement just beyond the edge of the station's glow. My eyes darted left, and I saw a figure, tall, lean, slipping along the side of the building. Too careful, too deliberate, the way someone moves when they don't want to be noticed. I froze. My breath misted faintly in the air, though the desert night wasn't that cold. Maybe it's a homeless guy, I told myself, or someone cutting through to get somewhere. That explanation should have comforted me. It didn't. Something about the way he moved made my skin tighten. I forced myself toward the convenience store. The fluorescent lights inside were dim and flickering, like they couldn't decide if they wanted to die out completely. The cashier, a kid who looked barely 18, didn't bother looking up from his phone. I grabbed an energy drink just for something to do with my hands. $3.50, he mumbled. His voice sounded small, even under the buzzing lights. I paid, shoved the can into my jacket pocket, and headed back out. I glanced over my shoulder before pushing the door open. The figure was gone. The air outside felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't explain. I walked briskly toward my car, gravel crunching louder now, every step echoing in my head. I unlocked the door, ready to slip inside, when I saw him. He was standing near the rear bumper of my car, half hidden in the shadows but not enough to conceal the gleam of his eyes, cold, fixed on me. My stomach dropped, a wave of instinct hitting me hard. This wasn't random. I tried to keep calm. My hands stayed loose at my sides, though my pulse was sprinting. Then behind me I heard footsteps, light, quick, purposeful. I spun around, and there he was, closer now, only an arm's length away. The first thing I noticed was his smell. Stale cigarettes mixed with something metallic. The second was the silence. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared at me. My mind raced. My body screamed to run, but my legs locked in place. Finally, he leaned in, voice rasping like gravel dragged across metal. "Got some change?" It was almost laughable. A request so mundane, delivered with such menace. My relief was fleeting. If money was all he wanted, I could hand it over and walk away. I slipped a hand into my pocket, fingers brushing the bills inside. Then, a brutal yank on my hair. My head snapped backward, pain tearing across my scalp. I gasped as he pressed something against my throat. Cold, sharp, a knife. "Don't scream, don't make a sound, or I'll open you right here," he whispered. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. The blade didn't move, its edge biting lightly against my skin. "Good," he said after a moment, his breath hot and sour against my ear. "Now we're going to New Mexico. You drive. You don't talk. You don't try anything. Or your car's gonna be your coffin." My chest felt like it was collapsing. He shoved me toward the driver's seat, the knife never leaving my neck. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, its sound deafening in the silence. "GPS," he snapped. "Use it." I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling so hard I almost dropped it. "Where in New Mexico?" I asked, trying to sound steady. He laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh, it was jagged, broken, like he was choking on it. "You'll know when we're there." I started driving. Every mile was torture, the knife hovering close, his gaze boring into me. Streetlights streaked past like pale ghosts, the road stretching endlessly ahead. My throat was dry, my chest tight. I tried to think, to plan, but all I could hear was his breathing. And then, something changed. It was subtle at first. The radio crackled, though it was off. The screen of my GPS flickered, the map twisting unnaturally, roads bending into impossible shapes before snapping back. I blinked hard, convinced exhaustion was making me hallucinate. At a red light near the edge of town, I caught sight of a truck, a Ford Ranger, barreling down a side road. For one dizzying second, I thought salvation had arrived. I slammed the gas pedal, my car jerking forward into the intersection. The sudden move startled him. His grip loosened just enough. I twisted, grabbing his wrist, shoving the knife away. It clattered onto the floorboards. He cursed, his voice warping strangely like it was coming from more than one mouth. That was when I saw it. His reflection in the windshield. It didn't match him. His real body was slumped against the passenger door, scowling, but in the glass his reflection grinned. Wide, too wide. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a man. Something was wrong. Something impossible. I slammed the horn, long and sharp, praying the truck driver would notice. He did. The Ford Ranger screeched to a stop beside me, its driver leaning out, eyes wide with concern. "Ma'am, you okay? What's going on?" I could barely form the words. Don't let him get away." The driver looked around, but the passenger seat was empty. Empty. My skin prickled as I realized I could still feel his breath on my neck. I locked the doors, fumbling for my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. The dispatcher's voice was steady, calm, grounding me enough to recount everything. But even as I spoke, I knew how it would sound. When the police arrived, they searched the area, shining lights into every corner of the lot. Nothing. They told me they'd keep a patrol car near my apartment for a few nights, but there was no evidence. No man, no knife. Nothing. The adrenaline ebbed, leaving only a hollow, gnawing dread. At home, I locked every door, every window. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the pipes, sent my heart into a sprint. Sometimes I'd catch shadows shifting where they shouldn't. Sometimes I swore I saw him reflected in the window glass, smiling even when there was nothing there. Weeks turned into months. The police never called back with updates. The man, or whatever he was, never appeared again. But he never really left either. He lingered in the corners of my vision, in the twitch of the GPS, in the sudden bursts of static on my phone. I bought a gun. I carried knives. I went to therapy. None of it stopped the dreams. In them, I was always driving, always with him beside me, always towards some destination in New Mexico I could never quite reach. I learned to keep going, to breathe through the terror, to live with the constant awareness that the world isn't as solid as it pretends to be. Sometimes, late at night, I still pass that gas station. Its neon buzzes faintly, flickering in the dark. And sometimes, when I glance toward the shadows near the rear pumps, I swear I see him, waiting. But I don't freeze anymore. I keep driving, my hands tight on the wheel, my breath steady. Still, one question haunts me, lingering in the silence between heartbeats. What if he never wanted money or a ride or even blood? What if all he wanted was me to keep driving? If you'd asked me at 21 where I'd be at 29, I would have never pictured myself shivering in the fluorescent glow of a midnight gas station, clutching a steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. Back then, I thought I was meant for something brighter. Maybe music, maybe books, maybe someone who loved me enough to pull me into the orbit of a better life. But life doesn't care about what you sketch for yourself. Somewhere between unpaid bills, half-finished dreams, and relationships that left scars I pretended weren't there, I ended up floating. My name is Rachel Monroe. I live in White Plains, New York, in a one-bedroom apartment where the walls are so thin I know more about my neighbor's failing marriage than I ever wanted to. I work remote IT support, which means my days are a blur of irritated voices on the other end of a headset, the faint smell of burnt coffee in my kitchen, and evenings where I watch reruns I've memorized just so I don't feel the silence. My parents still call every week, asking when I'm going to meet someone, settle down, have something to show for all the years I've been alive, and truthfully I've been trying. Searching. Mostly online, which is how I ended up in Pittsburgh that weekend. For months, I'd been talking to a guy named Ethan. He had that easy confidence in his messages, the kind of playful arrogance that on screen feels like charm. His pictures were warm and disarming, dimples when he smiled, the kind of smile that made me forget how lonely I was. We swapped playlists, traded bad jokes, talked about the futures we still pretended to believe in. Meeting him felt like the start of something real. Except it wasn't. Dinner was a train wreck. Every silence was heavy. Every joke I tried to make landed flat. He kept glancing at his phone, his smile widening for someone else on the other end of the notifications. By dessert, I knew. He knew. We shook hands in the parking lot like we'd just closed a deal neither of us wanted. He said, "Take care of yourself," with that practiced kindness people use when they're already somewhere else. I got in my car, my beat-up Toyota Corolla, the only constant in my life, and turned the radio up until the speakers crackled. Tried to laugh it off, but my chest felt tight. The Pennsylvania Turnpike stretched out long and empty. I drove with that restless energy that only comes after disappointment, headlights carving tunnels into the dark. Somewhere past 1 in the morning, the fuel light blinked on. I cursed under my breath. I hadn't planned for that. The next sign read, "Exit 219, fuel, food." I veered off. I figured I'd grab gas, maybe a coffee, and keep moving. That decision changed everything. The Sunoco sat alone, the lot wide and wet from recent rain. Its lights buzzed against the dark like insects trapped in glass. A semi idled by the diesel pumps, its low growl vibrating in my chest as I pulled up to the far pump. Inside, through the glass doors smeared with fingerprints, I saw the clerk hunched over his phone, his face blue from the glow. I swiped my card, started the pump, and told myself this was just another pit stop. And then I saw her. At the edge of the lot, where the light dissolved into shadow, a girl stood barefoot, stumbling like each step was a fight. Her clothes were torn, hair matted, her arms hanging loose like she'd been dragged. Her face. I thought at first she was drunk, maybe a runaway, but then her eyes lifted, caught mine, wide, terrified, begging without words. She ran straight for me. Her breath broke in ragged gasps as she reached me, voice cracking. "They're coming back, please, please, you have to help me." I froze, my whole body tensed, a scream pressed against my ribs, but something about the way her eyes locked on mine pinned me in place. She couldn't have been more than 20, maybe 21. Her arms were scraped raw, dark bruises blooming across her ribs where her hand clutched like each breath was fire. Without thinking, I unlocked the passenger door. She dove inside, curling up against the seat like a hunted animal. "Drive," she whispered. "Don't stop here. They'll find me." My first instinct was my phone. I pulled it out, thumb hovering over 911. The moment she saw, she lunged, grabbing my wrist with a strength that shocked me. "No, not yet. Please, just go. Just drive." Her grip was ice. My stomach knotted. Every rational part of me screamed, "Call the police. Call someone. Don't do this." But her eyes, wet and pleading, broke through reason. I started the engine. As I pulled toward the highway ramp, headlights flared in the rear view. A black SUV rolled into the lot, slowing near the pumps. 3 men climbed out. Even from where I sat, I could see the way they moved. Sharp, searching, deliberate. One of them carried a baseball bat, tapping it against his palm like he was already imagining where it would land. The girl ducked low, voice a whisper trembling with terror. "That's them." My throat went dry. If I merged onto the highway, they'd see us. If I stayed, we were trapped. My hands shook against the wheel. I parked on the far side of the store, shoved the door open and ran inside. The clerk looked up, startled, his mouth hanging open. "You need to call the cops," I hissed. "There's a girl outside. She's hurt." He blinked, then reached for the phone, his fingers clumsy, fumbling. Through the glass, I saw the men talking to the trucker. One of them gestured toward the lot. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then the girl bolted. She flew out of my car, her bare feet slapping against wet pavement as she sprinted for the tree line. The men shouted, gave chase, vanishing into the dark woods behind the station. I spun back to the clerk. He was still fumbling. "Hurry!" I shouted, but my own voice sounded foreign in my throat. I ran outside into the night. The woods swallowed everything. The wet leaves, the branches, even the sound of my breath. It all folded into silence. My flashlight app stuttered against blackness, catching glimpses of her pale figure between trees, the shadowed shapes of men chasing. Then, nothing. Just my ragged breath, the mud under my shoes, the silence of a place that felt endless. By the time I stumbled back to the lot, red and blue lights cut across the dark. Police cars lined the pumps, officers spilling into the trees with flashlights, dogs barking. I babbled about the girl, the SUV, the men. They listened, spread out, combed the woods. But they found nothing. No girl, no SUV, not even tire tracks. When they took my statement, their voices carried that practiced patience reserved for unstable witnesses. "So you're saying she was barefoot, bleeding, and 3 men were chasing her?" "Yes, I saw them. I swear." Their eyes flicked at each other. One patted my shoulder. "We'll keep looking." But their voices said, "We don't believe you." Days turned to weeks. I couldn't let it go. I drove that stretch of the turnpike, pulled off at exit 219, sat in the lot with coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the tree line. The clerk recognized me. "You're still thinking about that night?" I nodded. "You saw her, right? You called the cops." He frowned. "I called, but they showed me the tape." My stomach tightened. "What tape?" "The security footage. It didn't show her. Or the SUV. Just you. Alone." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "That's impossible." His voice was soft. "You were talking to nobody, running into the woods alone." The word struck me harder than I expected. I shook my head, but the doubt dug in deep. Late at night, lying in bed, I felt her grip on my wrist, heard her whisper in my ear. "They're coming back." It's been years now. I still take that road, still pull into the Sunoco sometimes. The lot hasn't changed, the fluorescent buzz, the clerk behind the counter. But every time, I find myself staring at the tree line, waiting. Because I can't shake the thought. Maybe she was real. Maybe I saw a ghost. Or maybe she was flesh and blood, running for her life, and the world swallowed her whole. And sometimes when the road is too quiet, when the night is too long, I swear I hear her again, a whisper from the backseat. Please, drive. That night at exit 219 taught me that sometimes the line between real and imagined is thinner than headlights on wet asphalt. Whether she was ghost, hallucination, or girl, the message remains. People are running from things we'll never see. If you get the chance to help, don't hesitate, even if no one else believes you. Some memories don't stay where they belong. They follow you, cling to your ribs like barbed wire, and no matter how many years pass, you feel the sting when you breathe. That night in the desert has lived with me longer than most of my happy memories, longer than birthdays, holidays, anniversaries. It presses against the edges of every quiet evening, a reminder that sometimes the road takes more than it gives. My name is Elaine Carter, and what happened on July 23, 1995, has become the fracture line that runs through everything I thought I understood about life, death, and the shadows in between. Back then, I was 34, a wife, a mother, someone who believed in maps and rules and the safety of the daylight. My husband, Nick, was the opposite. Restless, stubborn, full of a salesman's charm that could talk us into anything, even when we should have known better. And then there was Tommy, our 6-year-old, the brightest thing in my life. Small and fragile, with eyes that hadn't yet learned what real fear looked like. We were supposed to be on a family road trip that summer, the kind of adventure that binds people together in photographs and stories you tell years later. But stories don't always go the way you plan. Some of them rot instead of blossom. That Sunday we had been driving for hours, cutting through New Mexico, the sun glaring down like it wanted to peel us open. The Chevy Lumina rattled with every seam in the road, and the air conditioner gave up halfway past Gallup, coughing out nothing but hot air that smelled faintly of burning dust. Nick's hands gripped the wheel tighter than usual. His smile stretched thin whenever I glanced at him. He didn't admit it, but I could see it. The creeping realization that maybe his shortcut wasn't the time saver he had promised. I held the road atlas in my lap, the thin paper maps wrinkled from my fingers, tracing every possible line. "Nick, I told you we should have stayed on the interstate," I muttered, my throat dry from the desert air. "Relax," he said without looking at me. "We'll hit it again soon, just need to top off the tank." But the gauge was sinking fast. I could feel the tension pressing on my temples with every mile, the silence in the car stretching too long. Outside, the desert spread endless, the sky so wide it made me feel small, swallowed. There were no towns, no billboards, no landmarks, just the occasional scatter of rocks and a horizon that seemed to mock us. Then I saw it. A neon sign, faint and buzzing, floating like a mirage in the distance. At first I thought it was a trick of the heat, but the closer we drove, the clearer it became. A gas station, squatting on the roadside as if it had been forgotten there decades ago. Red Mesa Fuel Diner, the letters stuttering with every flicker. Nick exhaled in relief, but I felt the opposite. Something in my chest tightened. The place looked deserted, half alive at best. One pump. The windows of the attached diner were dark, maybe boarded, maybe just unlit. A lone pickup truck sat at the far end of the lot, its windows reflecting nothing but the humming neon. "Nick, this place gives me the creeps. Just fill it up quick," I whispered. He grinned like he always did when I sounded worried, trying to brush me off. 5 minutes tops, in and out. Wanted to believe him, but as we pulled in and the engine died, the desert silence rushed in like a tide. The only sounds were the tick-tick-tick of the Lumina cooling and the buzz of the sign. Tommy slept in the back, his head pressed against the glass, oblivious to everything. I cracked my window, the night air hot and dry, tasting of dust and something faintly metallic. "Nick, hurry, please." He didn't answer, just slid out of the driver's seat. I watched him grab the pump, the old mechanical dial ticking with every slow pull. Each click echoed too loudly, as if the emptiness around us wanted to repeat it. That's when I heard it. Shuffling. Heavy, deliberate. Not the skitter of an animal, not the scratch of desert wind. This was weight, footsteps pressing into gravel just beyond the edge of the lot. I snapped my head toward the sound, my heart skipping, but there was nothing. Just the shadow of the station and the stretching dark. "Nick, there's something," I started, but then he appeared. A man stepped out from the bushes. Thin, wiry, hood pulled over his head, his face mostly hidden. He moved fast, too fast, and in the yellow glow of the flickering light I saw the shotgun in his hands. I screamed before I could stop myself. Nick froze, hands in the air, the pump handle clattering to the ground. "Wallet, keys, now," the man barked. His voice was ragged, desperate, almost eager. "Please, my kid's in the car. Take whatever you want, just don't," Nick stammered, his voice breaking. And then another voice cut through the night. "Drop it!" I jerked my head toward the diner, and from the shadows a sheriff's figure emerged, gun drawn, moving with authority. His voice carried command. "Wait. Put that weapon down right now." For a second, no one moved. The hooded man's hands twitched on the shotgun. My chest burned, waiting for the sound of gunfire. But then, he lowered it. Not with fear. Not with surrender. With a strange, casual ease, like a man losing interest in a game. And then he turned, walked back into the desert, vanished into the darkness without looking back. The sheriff kept his weapon raised until the figure was gone, then lowered it slowly. He turned to us, his face unreadable. "You folks all right?" I scrambled out of the car, Tommy clutched in my arms now, his small body trembling with confusion and fear. I looked at Nick, who was pale, shaking, his eyes wide. "Who was that?" Nick demanded. The sheriff's gaze flicked toward the desert. "Someone who's been causing trouble out here. You shouldn't be traveling these back roads this late. Fill up and get back on the interstate. Don't stop." Nick frowned. "But who is he? Why is he out here?" "Doesn't matter," the sheriff said firmly. "Just go." There was something in his eyes, not relief, not victory, something closer to guilt. He urged us back into the car, his tone final. We finished fueling in silence. When Nick pulled us out of the lot, I looked back one last time. The sheriff stood frozen, gun still raised, watching the desert as if he expected something to return. We drove for miles without speaking. The night pressed down, heavy and endless. The radio stayed off. Tommy cried himself back to sleep. My thoughts spun in circles, snagging on the same question until I finally whispered it. "Nick, what if that sheriff wasn't real?" He shot me a look, his jaw tightening. "What are you talking about? Of course he was real. What if we imagined him? What if he wasn't—" "Elaine, stop. He was there. I saw him." But my words planted themselves like a seed in the dark. Because yes, the sheriff had looked real. His badge caught the light. His boots crunched gravel. But there was something about him that felt wrong, off, too sudden, too convenient. An hour later, we pulled into a bright, crowded truck stop along the interstate. Fluorescent lights, diesel engines, voices of tired men drinking coffee inside. Safe, ordinary. Nick asked about Red Mesa Fuel, but no one seemed to know it. One trucker squinted at us and finally said, "That place, burned down in the 70s, ain't been there for decades." The world tilted in that moment. The buzzing neon, the shotgun, the sheriff's steady voice, it all clashed with what we were being told. My hand found Nick's under the table inside the diner, and I gripped it so hard it hurt. We never went back. And yet, I can't shake the memory. Sometimes, in the quiet hours when the house is asleep, I hear the click of the gas pump, slow and steady. Sometimes I swear I see a flicker of neon in the corner of my vision, and my breath stutters, waiting for a figure to step out from the dark. Was the sheriff real? Was the man with the shotgun? Was any of it? I don't know. But I do know this. Some roads don't just take you somewhere. They keep a piece of you. And maybe, just maybe, they wait for you to come back. I used to think the world was simple. Good people and bad people. The kind of neat division you grow up believing when your parents still drive you everywhere and tuck you in at night. I carried that same blind confidence into adulthood, brushing off my mother's worries like they were just another relic of her overprotective nature. "The world isn't like you think it is, sweetheart," she told me once, her hand resting heavy on the steering wheel as we drove back from school. I couldn't have been more than 15. She glanced at me, her face pale in the late afternoon sun. "It's quieter, scarier. The bad people aren't loud, they're patient, and you won't know until it's too late." I remember rolling my eyes and laughing. "Mom, you sound like one of those TV crime shows. I can take care of myself." Her mouth tightened into a thin line, and she didn't say anything after that. It wasn't until years later, on a road trip that should have been forgettable, that I learned exactly what she meant. And even now, when I close my eyes, I can still feel that night stretching behind me, like I never really drove away at all. It was past midnight when I pulled into the gas station. The highway had been empty for miles, just a stretch of asphalt swallowed by fields and the occasional flicker of farmhouse lights in the distance. My car's fuel gauge had been flirting with empty for the last 20 minutes, and when the neon sign buzzed into view ahead of me, I felt an almost desperate relief. The station sat alone at the edge of a gravel lot, surrounded by nothing but dark trees and the humming void of open land. The buzzing sign flickered erratically, spitting the word "open" in broken red neon that felt less like a welcome and more like a warning. Even before I rolled to a stop, I felt something wrong, like stepping into a room where someone had just been whispering about you. I killed the engine, and silence fell too fast, too heavy. The air had a tight chill, the kind that prickles under your skin. For a moment I sat there listening. The only sound was the soft crunch of gravel settling under my tires and the faint electrical buzz of the lights overhead. But it wasn't the peaceful kind of silence. It was too sharp, too deliberate, like the air itself was holding its breath. I forced myself to move, climbing out of the car. My boots sank into the gravel with a sound that seemed much too loud. The smell hit me almost instantly. Dust, exhaust, and something stale, like oil left sitting in a closed-up garage. I grabbed the pump handle, and when I slid it into my tank, it rattled against the metal as though it didn't want to fit. I told myself to stop being ridiculous. It was just a rundown station. I'd been driving for hours, I was tired, and my imagination had always been a little too active. Still, I couldn't shake the thought, this place feels wrong. The convenience store behind the pumps was lit by a harsh, fluorescent glare. The glass doors reflected the lot in flat, sterile slices, making it impossible to see inside clearly. For a long moment, I stared at the reflection of my own face in the glass. Tired eyes, hair pulled back, lips pressed tight, and it looked like a stranger was staring back at me. That's when I saw him. At first, it was only a shadow, a suggestion of movement near the store entrance. But then the glass shifted, and he was there. A man standing just inside, watching. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't even blink. Just stood there, half hidden by the reflection, like he'd been waiting for me. I froze, one hand gripping the pump, the other tightening into a fist at my side. My throat felt dry, and yet the taste of metallic fear rose in the back of it. The pump clicked suddenly, loud as a gunshot in the silence. I jumped, and when I looked back at the door, he was gone. My heart was pounding too fast, too hard. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. "You're being paranoid," I whispered out loud, the sound too thin in the empty lot. "Just pay and leave." But when I walked toward the store, every step felt like it carried me deeper into something I didn't understand. The door creaked when I pulled it open, and the sound seemed to echo much longer than it should have. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, bathing everything in a washed-out, colorless glow. The air smelled of cheap disinfectant and something faintly sweet that reminded me of spoiled candy. Behind the counter sat a young woman, no older than me, scrolling on her phone. She glanced up, her face pale and blank, and then looked back down without a word. The aisles were short, narrow, stocked with dusty bags of chips and faded cans of soda. I walked slowly, forcing myself to breathe evenly, but the silence inside was worse than outside. It wasn't empty. It was buzzing, like an electrical hum pressed directly into my skull. I told myself to relax, to just pay and go. I grabbed a bottle of water and walked to the counter. The cashier rang it up without making eye contact. I slid my card across, and as I did, I glanced behind me. He was there, standing at the end of the aisle, maybe 15 feet away. The same man I'd seen in the glass. He was tall, with dark hair and clothes that looked too clean, too deliberate, like he'd stepped out of a department store mannequin line. His face was ordinary in the way that makes it impossible to describe except for one thing. He was smiling. Not a friendly smile, not even a threatening one. Just a thin, precise curve of lips that didn't touch his eyes. A smile that said he knew something I didn't. I froze. My heart slamming against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body locked. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there smiling. The cashier didn't react, didn't even glance up. "Ma'am," she said flatly, her voice startling me. "Your receipt." I turned back toward her, but when I looked again, the man was gone. My hands shook as I took the slip of paper. I didn't want to ask if she'd seen him. I didn't want her to look at me with that same blank expression and say, "What man?" I forced a nod and walked quickly back to my car. The night outside felt heavier now, pressing against my chest. I fumbled with the keys, my fingers clumsy, before finally unlocking the door and sliding inside. The interior of my car smelled faintly of fabric cleaner and the lingering trace of fast food, normally comforting scents, but now they felt artificial, fake, like they were trying to cover something else. I shoved the key into the ignition and turned it. The engine roared, too loud in the silence, and for a second I thought it wouldn't catch. As I shifted into drive, I glanced up. He was standing at the far edge of the lot, the same thin smile stretched across his face, his hands loose at his sides. He didn't move toward me, didn't wave, just watched. My breath came in shallow bursts, and I pressed my foot down harder on the gas. Gravel crunched, then gave way to asphalt, and the station shrank in the rearview mirror until it was swallowed by darkness. But the feeling didn't leave. The road stretched ahead of me, endless and black. My headlights carved a narrow path through it, but everything outside their beam was absolute void. I tried to tell myself I was safe now, that I'd left him behind, but the thought kept clawing at me. What if he's still out there? I drove for miles, but the silence followed. My radio fizzed with static when I tried to turn it on. My phone had no service. The taste of fear lingered in my throat, bitter and metallic, like I'd swallowed a coin. And then, in the mirror, I saw headlights. Far behind me at first, just two pale dots in the distance, but they grew closer, steady, deliberate. My hands tightened on the wheel until my knuckles ached. It couldn't be him. It couldn't. But as the lights drew nearer, I thought I saw it again. That same thin, unnatural smile reflected in the glass, like it had burned itself into my vision. I'll never know how I made it home that night. I don't remember stretches of the drive at all. It's like my mind cut out, only fragments remaining. The crunch of gravel when I finally pulled into my driveway. The smell of damp earth in the night air. The weight of silence pressing against my skull. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, standing just at the edge of sight, smiling. I'd wake up gasping, convinced I heard the faint crunch of gravel outside my window. I tried to tell myself it was just a scare, just a stranger. But then I saw the news. That gas station, the one I'd stopped at, was taped off the next morning. A crime scene. The cashier was dead. No suspects, no witnesses. Only a description, vague and unfinished, of a man seen loitering nearby. A man with a smile. It's been years, but I can still smell the dust and exhaust, still hear the buzzing silence of that place, still feel the tight chill in the air when I stepped out of my car. My mother was right. The world isn't loud and obvious. The bad things don't come screaming. They wait. They smile. And sometimes I wonder, on nights when the silence feels too sharp, when I catch my reflection and it doesn't quite look like me, I wonder if I ever really left that gas station at all. By the time I turned 22, I already suspected that silence could be dangerous. Not because of anything dramatic in my past, but because I'd learned how silence could change shape depending on how long you sat inside it. At first it felt like peace. Restful, safe, a pause from the noise of the world. But if you waited too long, if you sat in silence until your body realized no one was coming and nothing was moving, that peace curdled. It grew sharp, alive, like something pressing its ear against the inside of your life, listening back. I didn't tell people I thought like that. To my family and friends, I was just a normal small-town girl who'd decided college wasn't for her. My parents pretended not to be disappointed, though I saw it flicker behind their smiles. They wanted me to aim higher than stocking shelves or sweeping floors, but northern Minnesota didn't hand out steady jobs unless you had a trade. I didn't. What I had was a rusted Toyota, a one-bedroom walk-up with thin walls, and eventually, the job that would ruin my sleep and maybe my mind, the graveyard shift at Lakeside Fuel Stop. The place was barely more than a glowing box dropped at the edge of Highway 61, crouched between the black wall of woods and the endless dark stretch of Lake Superior. It looked normal enough, fluorescent lights buzzing, the faint stink of gas and burnt coffee always in the air, but at night it sat there like something waiting, holding its breath. Mr. Walsh, the owner, interviewed me while talking mostly about fishing. When I asked whether nights ever got rough, he grinned through crooked teeth and said, "Easiest money you'll ever make, sweetheart. Keep the coffee hot, stock the shelves, clean up a little, and lock the bathroom after midnight. Whole town's asleep by then. You'll be fine." I wanted to believe him, and at first I did. The hours gutted me. Midnight to 6 a.m. leaves you staggering like a ghost even in daylight. But the work itself was nothing. Most nights, 4 or 5 customers, tops, truckers refueling, drunk couples laughing too loudly as they grabbed chips. By 3 a.m., the whole world outside felt abandoned. I liked the solitude in the beginning. I'd brew coffee, shuffle through paperbacks, hum along to the cooler's buzz, and let the minutes drag. But as the weeks stretched, that quiet turned heavy. The fluorescent lights hummed too loud. My reflection in the glass doors looked like someone else. Silence itself began to feel like a person standing very close, breathing with me. The first time I heard it, I thought I was losing it. A whistle. Not a song, not cheerful. Just a faint, steady tune drifting in through the glass doors around 2:30 in the morning. The pumps were empty, the lot deserted, highway black. The sound carried a few seconds longer, then stopped as if whoever was making it had noticed me listening. I told myself it was the wind, though deep down I already knew it wasn't. The next night, same time, same tune. I froze behind the counter, skin crawling. When it didn't fade, I forced myself outside. The lot was empty. The trees loomed, blacker than the sky. And still, the whistling moved faintly around me, circling just out of sight. The next morning I asked Hank, the older guy who worked days, if he'd ever heard anything strange. He froze mid-sip of his coffee, set the mug down slow, and kept his eyes fixed on the counter. "You heard it too, huh?" The whistling. He nodded once. His jaw worked like he wanted to say more but wouldn't. "Don't pay it no mind, and don't go looking for it either." That was all, but ignoring it wasn't possible. By then I was sleeping badly, exhaustion scraping at the edges of me. I'd close my eyes during the day only to jolt awake at faint sounds, imagined footsteps, a breath in the corner of the room. My thoughts grew sticky. I'd misplace things, reread the same line of a book 5 times without absorbing it. And sometimes, in the edge of my vision, I'd see movement that wasn't there. I started dreading 2:30 a.m., counting down to it. Sure enough, the sound always came. A lonely whistle, low and steady, carrying across the black. Then came the bathroom. Walsh had been clear. Lock it after midnight. Said it kept out drunks, vandals, whatever. One night around 3, I noticed light glowing under the door. My stomach dropped. The key was hanging behind the counter where it always was. And then I heard it. Water running. I unlocked the door. The sink dripped. The mirror was fogged, as though someone had stood breathing against it. Across the glass, smeared with wet streaks, were crooked shapes that at first looked random, until I blinked and saw they weren't. They looked like letters. From my name. L-Y-A. The first 3 letters of Lila. I slammed the door so hard the frame shook. When I told Walsh the next day, he laughed. Pipes are noisy. Place is old. You've been listening to Hank's ghost stories. I didn't bother telling my parents. I knew how that would go. But I did tell my friend Rachel when we met for coffee. She laughed, just like Walsh. Girl, you've been reading too many of those murder paperbacks you're obsessed with. It's just your brain playing tricks on you. I mean, Graveyard Shift. You're basically begging for hallucinations. She wasn't wrong. By then I was unraveling from lack of sleep. But hearing her brush it off still stung, made me feel smaller, like maybe none of it mattered because no one else believed me. The whistling grew bolder after that. Louder, clearer, not outside anymore but pressing against the walls, slipping under the doors. By the second week, I didn't just hear it. I felt it in my chest, a vibration that left me nauseous. My hands trembled constantly. Sometimes when I closed my eyes, I saw the bathroom mirror fogged with breath, letters twisting into words I didn't understand. And then came the figure. I was restocking chips near the window when I saw movement at pump 3. A tall figure, shoulders hunched, hands stuffed into pockets, head tilted toward me. I blinked, and it vanished. That night I didn't even try to sleep. Every sound in my apartment became suspect. The fridge hum, the neighbor's footsteps, the distant cry of gulls over the lake. My mind bent them all into that whistle. When I finally broke down and asked Hank again, he sighed and rubbed his temples like a man who'd carried a secret too long. "Kid," he said, voice low. "You ever hear about Michael Anders? Worked this shift back in '98. Young, like you. They found him in that bathroom one morning, locked from the inside. Dead." I swallowed. "How?" Hank's eyes shifted, unfocused. "Wasn't no clean story. Coroner called it heart failure, but his face... Kid, they said his mouth was stretched like he was screaming when he died. No one heard him. Not till morning." The name stuck to me. Michael. The whistling wasn't random anymore. It belonged to someone. From then on, every time I heard it, it felt like he was circling closer, trying to reach me. The bathroom fog spelled different things now. Sometimes crooked smears that looked like numbers 98. Sometimes shapes that looked like waves, the curve of the lake. Once, clear as day, it spelled, "Stay with me." That was the night the automatic doors slid open at 2:30 with no one there. Cold air poured in, carrying the whistle. The sensors beeped like someone had walked inside. I couldn't move. The sound threaded through the aisles, deliberate, closer. Then a pack of cigarettes fell off the counter. My brand. The one I always bought after work. My stomach turned to ice. It wasn't random. It was for me. I bolted out the front, fumbling my keys, barely making it to my car. I sat there until dawn, shaking, the whistle weaving through the walls behind me. The next morning, Hank found me pale, exhausted, barely able to speak. I told him everything. He only nodded, grave, like he'd expected it. Michael never left. he whispered. Some say he's stuck here. Some say he keeps watch so nobody else stays too long. But maybe he just doesn't want to be alone. I quit that week. Told Walsh I couldn't handle the hours. He rolled his eyes, called me soft, but I didn't care. For weeks after, I tried to bury it. But sleep never came easy. Sometimes I woke gasping, certain I'd heard the whistle outside my window. Sometimes I dreamed of the lake. Dark water stretching forever, a shadow moving beneath the surface, whistling through the waves. And then one night, after forcing myself not to drive past the station, I came home and emptied my coat pocket and found something I had never seen before. A rusted key, small, heavy, stained dark with age. I knew what it was. The bathroom key from Lakeside Fuel Stop. I dropped it on the counter, heart pounding, but when I picked it up again, I swear it felt warm. I should have thrown it away, burned it. But instead, I tucked it into the drawer beside my bed. And that night, when the wind rattled my window, I heard it again. Faint, steady whistling, as though someone were sitting just outside, waiting. And sometimes, God help me, I whistle back. Because fear doesn't leave you clean. Fear plants itself in your chest, roots deep, until part of you belongs to it. And sometimes, when I listen close, I can feel a part of me waiting to step back into the dark, a part that has learned to whistle a lonely tune. I never thought I'd end up working nights at a gas station. Maybe that sounds small, almost boring, but there's something about a choice like that. Something about how it creeps up on you. Life doesn't usually collapse all at once. It wears down piece by piece, until you're standing in a place you swore you'd never be, staring at your reflection in a smudged cooler door, wondering how the hell you got here. I'm Rachel Morgan, 32 years old, and most days I feel like my own shadow. I used to think I'd be a nurse or maybe a teacher, something steady, meaningful. Instead, I spend my nights under flickering fluorescent lights, ringing up cigarettes and cheap whiskey for strangers who barely look me in the eye. I tell myself it's temporary. Everyone does, right? That's how you survive the night shift. You pretend it's not your life. You pretend the silence and the stale smell of burnt coffee and gasoline are just passing through. You tell yourself you're tougher than the hours, tougher than the loneliness. But deep down, I know the truth. The silence gets inside you. It changes you. The gas station where I work, Canyon Gas, isn't the kind of place you stumble across unless you're already lost. It's tucked off a 2-lane road that barely gets traffic at night. Old brick walls, a buzzing neon sign that never fully lights up, and an empty upstairs that's been locked for years. At least that's what they told me when I was hired. Franklin, the other clerk, has been here forever. He's wiry gray stubble, the kind of smoker's cough that rattles the walls when it hits him. He only works part of the week now, covering the days I can't. We overlap for maybe 10 minutes during shift change. That's usually enough for him to hand me the keys, grunt something like, "Don't fall asleep," and walk out without looking back. He doesn't waste words. The first week was quiet. Just me, the hum of the coolers, and the creak of the old ceiling. By the second week, I started hearing it. The noises. At first, I thought I was tired, half dreaming as I restocked candy and wiped down counters. But the sounds had rhythm, clicking, like someone typing on a keyboard. Not random, measured, fast, purposeful. The third night, it wasn't just typing. It was footsteps, slow, deliberate, above me, as if someone was pacing in the empty upstairs offices. The place was locked. I knew that. Franklin told me it had been for decades. But the footsteps didn't care what I knew. And then came the voice. A girl's voice, humming a lullaby. The first note stopped me cold. The kind of song that doesn't belong in a gas station, doesn't belong in the middle of the night, doesn't belong when you're the only one alive in the building. I froze in front of the drink coolers, mop still in my hand, my skin prickling. The humming was soft, almost gentle, almost comforting. But I knew, in that instant, comfort wasn't what it meant. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe me? But a week later, when Franklin came in, I asked, careful, almost joking, "You ever hear anything upstairs?" The way he looked at me, I'll never forget it. He didn't laugh, didn't scoff. His eyes went sharp, hard, then just as quickly softened, like he pitied me. He shook his head slowly and muttered, "Don't go up there. Trust me, just don't." That was it. No explanation, no reassurance, just the warning. But once you hear something like that, you can't unhear it. The noises didn't stop. Typing, footsteps, the lullaby that made my chest ache in ways I didn't want to think about. Sometimes I heard conversations, muffled voices like a meeting was happening right above my head. Once, I swear, I heard a phone ringing, loud and insistent, like 100 calls no one was answering. I tried recording it on my phone. Every clip came back silent. And then the storm came. It was February, one of those nights when the air itself feels heavy, metallic, like it's carrying electricity. By midnight, the rain was hammering the glass doors, the parking lot had turned into a lake of black water, and the neon sign outside flickered like a dying heartbeat. Business was dead. Not a soul had come by in hours. That's when the noises got louder. Typing so fast and hard it sounded urgent, desperate. Footsteps that seemed heavier, closer, and under it all, faint. Barely there, but inescapable. The humming. I tried to ignore it. I told myself Franklin's warning was enough. But the truth? Curiosity eats at you. It gnaws like a rat, louder every second until you can't think past it. By 2 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. On the back wall of the station hung a row of keys. Most were boring. Stockroom, restroom, maintenance. But one was different. Old. Iron. Its label faded but still readable. Storage. My hands shook as I pulled it free. The stairwell to the upstairs was narrow, steep, claustrophobic. Each step groaned like it was warning me back. Halfway up, the smell hit me. Damp rot, mildew, and beneath it something sharper, metallic, like blood that had dried and been forgotten. The key scraped in the lock, loud enough to echo. When the door finally opened, a wave of foul, stale air rushed out, thick enough to make my stomach turn. The room stretched before me, an office graveyard. Desks overturned, monitors cracked, papers scattered like everyone had fled in a hurry. The ceiling sagged, stained brown with water damage. A single fluorescent tube flickered, buzzing weakly. But it wasn't the decay that stopped me cold. It was the footprints, fresh, pressed into the dust, clear as day. And then I heard them. Footsteps. Not mine. From the far end of the room, a figure emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit, sharp lines that didn't belong in this place. His shoes shone, polished, impossibly clean against the filth. His face was pale, unreadable, his eyes lowered like he didn't see me, or didn't want to. He walked across the wreckage with purpose, stopping at an old desk. His hand rested on it, gentle, reverent, like it meant something to him. He whispered something, too soft for me to catch. Then he turned toward the wall and pressed his hand against an elevator button. My heart seized. There was no elevator upstairs. None. Yet the button glowed. He stepped forward, and in that instant, he was gone. Not faded, not walked away. Gone. I stumbled backward, shoulder slamming the door frame, flashlight clattering to the ground. Papers rustled, though no wind blew. My chest heaved as I bolted down the stairs, every creak chasing me like footsteps at my back. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking so violently I could barely turn the key. For the rest of that shift, I sat at the counter, clutching stale coffee like it might anchor me to reality. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow felt like it was waiting. When Franklin came at 6, he stopped cold at the sight of me. "You look like hell," he said. I tried to play it off, but my voice cracked. "Franklin, what's upstairs?" He studied me for a long moment. His eyes softened again, the way you look at someone who's already lost. Finally, he shook his head. "Told you not to go." "That's not an answer," I snapped. "Who is he? What is that place?" His lips pressed thin, then quietly. "Some places hold on to what people leave behind. Work, worry, regret. This station's been around a long time. Longer than you know." That was all he gave me, but it was enough. The noises never stopped after that. If anything, they grew louder. Typing that rattled in my skull, footsteps that seemed to pace just above my head, phones ringing in the dead of night, and always the lullaby. I never went back upstairs. I couldn't. But sometimes I wonder if I left it too late, because even now, years later, when storms roll in and the wind rattles my windows, I swear I hear it. The typing, the footsteps, and the humming, soft and familiar, the kind of sound you'd use to soothe a child. And I don't know anymore if it's coming from a place I worked, or from a place inside me that never really left. Some places remember. Some people too. The question is, when everything you've buried starts humming through the walls, how do you know if it's the building that's haunted, or if it's you? I've always hated the dark. Not in the childish way people mean it, where you imagine monsters in the closet or shapes in the corner of your room, but in the deeper sense, when it's too quiet, too empty, and your brain begins filling in what your eyes can't see. That kind of darkness has always pressed against me like a weight, whispering things I never wanted to hear. I used to think I'd grow out of it, but if anything, the older I've gotten, the more I've realized the dark doesn't go away, it just waits. Back in March of 2013, I found myself swallowed up by it again. At the time, I had a warehouse job outside of Denver, shifts so long they twisted my body into something unrecognizable. The kind of work that leaves you bone sore and wired at the same time, like your nerves haven't decided if they're dead or overfiring. That Thursday, I clocked out just past 11, already aching for my bed, already imagining the stretch of silence in my small rented house in Buena Vista, a town that looked beautiful under the sun, but transformed into something else entirely once the mountains ate the daylight. The roads at night felt like tunnels. The moon only gave enough light to remind you of what you couldn't see. My plan was simple: drive the familiar winding trail of Highway 285, push through the exhaustion, and not think about the silence pressing against the car windows. But I hadn't planned for one thing. My fuel light had been glaring for 10 miles, a steady orange eye reminding me how careless I'd been. And at 2 in the morning, when the temperature drops so fast it feels like someone pulled the ground out from under you, the last place you want to be is stranded on a mountain road. That's when I spotted it, a faint neon glow breaking through the dark like a fragile promise. Relief hit me hard enough to sting my eyes. I pulled in fast, tires crunching on ice, and found myself at a place that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1980s. Silver Creek Gas Mart. The name was barely legible on the weathered sign. The canopy lights above the pumps flickered with a lazy buzz, just bright enough to throw weak halos onto the icy lot. Around it, the forest pressed in close, 3 sides of black so thick it looked like the trees were leaning forward to listen. The whole place felt like the last scrap of civilization before the wilderness took back what it was owed. That was when I noticed the car. A beat-up sedan sat at the far end of the lot, its windows fogged from the inside. The headlights from my car swept across it, and the reflection of glass gave a strange glint back at me. I couldn't tell if anyone was inside. I didn't want to look too long. Something about it pulled at me. Like the longer I stared, the more likely it was that something would stare back. I shoved the nozzle into my tank, pretending I didn't feel exposed under the buzzing light, pretending I didn't want to keep glancing over my shoulder. The cold bit through my jacket and made my teeth ache. Inside, the store wasn't much better. The air smelled like dust baked into the tile, Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, their glow turning everything into a pale, washed-out version of itself. A cashier, young, slouched, headphones looped around his neck, barely moved when I came in. "Coffee?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud against the silence. He gestured without looking, a lazy tilt of his hand toward a counter in the back. The silence outside was worse. I poured myself a cup, but my hand trembled slightly. No cars on the highway. No movement in the lot. Only the faint hiss of wind pressing against the building, and underneath it, if I let my ears wander, the strange certainty that something was breathing just beyond the glass. I told myself I was being stupid. Get gas, get coffee, keep driving. Still, I asked, "Hey, restroom around here?" The kid finally glanced up, eyes tired, face barely interested. He reached under the counter and tossed something across, a heavy wooden block with a rusty key dangling from it. "Out there." He jerked his chin toward the side of the building. It should have been nothing, but when I stepped back into the freezing night with that key, I felt something shift, like I was walking into a space where I didn't belong. The side door was old, warped, paint peeling in strips that curled like dead skin. The hinges groaned as I slid the key in, and the forest behind the building seemed to grow darker with every second I lingered. The sedan at the far end of the lot was still there, windows shining faintly from the reflection of my car's lights. I felt eyes. That's the only way I can describe it. Eyes from the forest, eyes from the sedan, eyes from somewhere I couldn't name. The door gave with a reluctant creak and the smell hit me first. Bleach, yes, but beneath it something sour. Mildew, damp, stagnant water. The restroom was small, the kind of space that swallows sound. 2 sinks, a crooked paper towel dispenser, a row of stalls with doors that didn't quite fit their frames. A single bulb swung overhead on a frayed wire, throwing uneven shadows that slid across the walls every time it flickered. And at the far end, under the last stall door, I saw them. Boots. Muddy, scuffed, work boots, toes pointed perfectly straight, unmoving. At first I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a drifter, someone hiding from the cold. This wasn't unusual in towns like this. My voice sounded weak when I called out, "Hey, you all right in there?" Silence. The bulb flickered. I took a cautious step closer, the sound of my boots on tile far too loud. "Sir, do you need help?" Nothing. Only the faint drip of water from the sink. I was already turning to leave when it happened. The left boot shifted, just slightly, heel scraping softly against the tile before going still again. The air changed in my lungs. That single movement was worse than if he'd lunged at me, worse than if he'd spoken, because it meant he wasn't asleep. He was listening. My pulse slammed in my ears. Something about the silence that followed felt wrong. Not human wrong. I backed up, fingers slipping against the cold metal of the door handle. The key block was heavy, slick in my sweaty hand, and then the stall door creaked open, slow, teasing. Through the narrow crack I saw a face, pale, hooded, eyes dark and unblinking. No confusion, no fatigue, just awareness. Cold, deliberate. I didn't decide to move. My body simply did. The lock turned, the door opened, and I bolted into the freezing night. My heart hammered hard enough to rattle my ribs. The lot looked emptier than before, if emptiness could feel heavier. The sedan sat at the edge, windows still fogged. I didn't look inside. I didn't dare. I nearly slipped on ice, still clutching that block of wood like proof in my hand. Inside the store, I slammed it on the counter. My words tumbled over each other, broken and frantic. "Restroom! There's someone in your restroom!" The cashier blinked, pulling his headphones down. "What?" "The stall. The last stall. There's a guy in there. He was watching me." The kid frowned, confusion flickering. "Nah. Restroom's been locked for weeks. Plumbing's busted." The words didn't compute. I stared at him, shaking my head. "You gave me the key." He frowned harder, reached under the counter, and pulled out a nearly identical block of wood with a key dangling from it. "This is the only restroom key we have. Been here since I started tonight." The bottom dropped out of my stomach. I turned toward the door, but my body felt heavy, slow. Then what the hell did I use? We went outside together. The side door I just fled from hung open, creaking softly in the wind. The bulb swung overhead. Inside, the restroom was empty. The stall stood open, silent. The boots were gone. No footprints on the wet tile. No proof anyone had ever been there. The sedan was empty too when we finally approached it. Windows still fogged from the inside. No belongings, no driver. Just silence that felt worse than noise. I left that night, but the weight of it never left me. And what haunts me most isn't the boots. It isn't the face. It's the key, that block of wood, real and heavy in my hand. I can still feel its weight in my palm sometimes, as if it followed me. If the gas station didn't own it, where did it come from? And why did it fit perfectly into a door that shouldn't have been used in weeks? Every time I pass Silver Creek, the side door still hangs there, weathered, crooked. I half expect to see those boots again, waiting. And I know this much. Not every danger announces itself. Some dangers wait, patient, silent, until you're close enough to see their eyes. The first thing I remember from that night wasn't the cold, though God knows Montana in December carries cold like a religion. It was the sound of the sky, a hollow, endless hum above me, as though the blackness overhead pressed down on the earth itself, swallowing the headlights of my car in one long, suffocating gulp. I'd grown up under these skies, learned how to drive their empty roads, how to respect their storms, how to fear their silence. But that night, on December 14th, 2017, with my 5-year-old daughter Clara humming a fractured tune in the back seat, I realized the silence of the Montana winter isn't absence. It's weight. It's presence. It's something alive, listening. We were 3 hours into the drive to my in-laws' ranch near Billings, where my husband Matt had already gone ahead. He'd promised the fire would be lit by the time we arrived, that the smell of pine logs and his mother's cinnamon cookies would greet us, but the road to that comfort was long and endless. Clara's hum drifted forward from the back seat, a broken, half-forgotten jingle bells stitched together with nonsense words she made up. Normally the sound soothed me, but that night it sat in my chest like an ache, sharp, out of rhythm with my heartbeat. I tried not to look at the gas gauge, but when the orange glow blinked alive, my throat tightened. The road behind me stretched black and empty for what felt like forever, and ahead, only snowbanks, trees, the dark shape of nothing. Running out of gas out here wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous. I whispered to myself, Cedar Point gas. Still out here, isn't it? A ghost of a memory surfaced. A rundown station by the woods, the kind you don't stop at unless you're desperate. I hadn't been there in years. Maybe not since high school. But desperation doesn't ask for comfort, only survival. By 4:30 p.m., the last traces of daylight had already drowned in the black. My eyes blurred from the monotony of snow and trees when finally, a flicker appeared ahead. A neon sign, half dead, its buzzing glow spelling out, gas open 24 hours. The letters jittered against the dark as though they didn't quite believe themselves. Relief and unease struck at once. The lot was nearly empty, lit by a single flickering lamp. A rusted pickup sat by the pumps, hood up, shadows shifting inside its cab. 2 men. Staring. Clara's small voice broke the silence. "Mommy, I don't like it here." Neither did I. Every nerve in me screamed to keep driving. But the needle on my gauge clung to the last notch, and Clara's whisper cut sharper. "I really have to go potty." That decided it. Against every instinct, I turned into the lot. The air bit my face the second I stepped out, so sharp it felt like it pierced straight through my gloves. The crunch of my boots was the only sound until I dared glance sideways. The men in the truck hadn't moved. Their faces, dimly lit by the station's buzzing sign, followed every step I took. I slid my card into the pump. Error. Tried again. Error. My stomach sank. I'd have to go inside. The glass door creaked, hinges protesting. Inside, the station reeked of burnt coffee, motor oil, and something metallic, coppery that made my throat sting. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, throwing shadows that bent unnaturally in the corners. Behind the counter sat a young man with greasy hair, hunched over his phone. He didn't even look up. Clara tightened her grip on my hand. "Can we be fast, Mommy?" I nodded, though my chest felt like it was collapsing in. "Pump 3. It's not taking my card," I said, voice thin. The clerk grunted, eyes still on his phone. "Try again. If it don't work, pay cash." Clara tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, bathroom?" The clerk jerked his thumb toward the back hallway, still not glancing up. A heavy wooden key dangled on a hook. I grabbed it, muttering thanks he didn't hear. The hallway was dim, walls covered in peeling paint that curled like dried skin. Clara's boots squeaked on the tile as we walked. The bathroom door stuck, lock catching only after a fight. The smell inside was harsh bleach masking mildew, the kind of clean that doesn't actually clean. The stall latch was broken. I whispered, "Just stay close to me." Clara nodded, clutching my coat. As she washed her hands, the sound came. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Right outside the door. Clara froze. "Mommy, someone's waiting." I pressed my ear to the wood. The steps stopped. Silence. Then, retreating. I pulled Clara out quickly, her eyes wide. Back in the store, the men from the truck were inside now, standing in the snack aisle. Not speaking, not browsing, just shifting, watching. The clerk still scrolled, oblivious. My stomach knotted so tight it hurt. At the counter, I slid my card forward. "Pump 3, fill up." Finally, the clerk looked up. Blank eyes. He swiped lazily, dropped the card in front of me. From the aisle, one of the men muttered, "Long way from town. Roads get dangerous out here." His voice wasn't small talk. It was statement, warning, or promise. I forced a smile I didn't feel, tugging Clara's hand. Outside, my heart sank. The truck had moved. Now it sat directly behind my car. "Quick, get in the car," I whispered. My voice shook. Clara scrambled inside. I slid in, hands trembling, key turning. For one fleeting second, I thought maybe it would end there. But then, the crunch of boots. One man approached, something metallic glinting in his hand. He tapped it against my window. Hollow. Threat. Clara screamed. I slammed the gas. Tires screeched, swerving around their truck, clipping its bumper. Clara cried out as we jolted back onto the highway. My mirror flared, headlights alive, chasing. "Mommy, they're chasing us," Clara sobbed. I pressed harder, knuckles white on the wheel. "It's okay, baby. Just hold on. We'll be fine." My voice was a lie. Inside, panic roared. The black road stretched endless. Every time I sped up, so did they. Their lights grew, shrank, grew again. A predator's game. My chest heaved. Should I call the police? Would they even come? Then, another pair of headlights. A truck coming fast, my father-in-law's old pickup. Relief surged. I flashed my brights. The truck behind us slowed, then veered off into the woods. Gone. I pulled over, trembling so hard I thought I'd break. My father-in-law rushed to my door. "What happened? Are you okay? Where's Clara?" "She's here. She's okay," I choked. "Two men. Gas station. They blocked us in." His face darkened. He pulled us into his cab. Later at the ranch, Matt pale on the porch, we told the story. My father-in-law went to his office, pulled up security footage from the driveway. My stomach dropped. 2 nights earlier, the same rusted truck had circled the property. Twice. He called the sheriff. The deputy's voice was dismissive. Probably nothing. Maybe some drifters. We'll make a note of it. Drifters don't block women and children at gas stations. My father-in-law snapped. But the line was dead. That night, Clara wouldn't let me go. Every creak of the house jolted me awake. Every gust of wind became headlights in my mind. Days passed, but dread stayed. Even surrounded by family, the feeling was clear. This wasn't random. On a grocery run days later, I passed Cedar Point Gas in daylight. Empty, the truck gone. The clerk slumped behind his counter, but the sight made bile rise in my throat. I couldn't stop. When we left a week later, Matt drove. I sat clutching Clara's hand, scanning every car. Not until we reached Billings did I breathe. Years later, the fear still lingers. Every time I stop for gas on a lonely road, it's there. Clara, older now, sometimes whispers, "Mommy, are those bad men coming back?" I tell her no. Always no. But sometimes, when the wind hums against the glass like a voice, when a shadow crosses the corner of my headlights where no one should be, my heart knows better. Because what if it wasn't just men? What if the silence of Montana winter was never silence at all? I never liked night drives. Not because of the dark or the quiet or even the loneliness, though each of those has its own weight, pressing into you the longer you stay out. What unsettled me was the thought that once the sun dipped below the horizon, no one was watching out for you anymore. You could vanish into the black just beyond your headlights, and no one would know until morning, if they ever knew at all. 3 years ago, I was 18, still raw, still figuring out what counted as normal fear and what counted as the kind you're supposed to listen to. My boyfriend at the time, Ryan, worked nights at a gas station on the edge of a half-dead industrial city in South Dakota, the kind of place where you either worked nights or you didn't work at all. We lived in a small apartment above a pawn shop that had been shuttered for years, 2 blocks off the main drag. Our neighbors were broken glass, papered over windows, and an abandoned strip mall with weeds taller than kids in the parking lot. The gas station, a 24-hour Quick Mart, sat across from a U-Haul lot and a concrete mixing plant, where piles of gray dust clung to the air even on windless nights. After sundown, the whole area looked like a forgotten corner of a map. Streetlights buzzed over cracked pavement. Neon signs blinked like dying bugs. The air smelled faintly of wet rust and gasoline, always damp, always sour. The town itself was a half measure, not big enough to have a real downtown, but large enough that crime could be buried in the cracks. It was the kind of place where you double-checked your car doors in broad daylight, where police cruisers only appeared if there was already blood on the sidewalk. Ryan didn't have a car. I drove him to and from work, because the thought of him walking that stretch, especially past the freight yards, kept me awake. I told myself I didn't mind. The drives gave me an excuse to stay out late, to slip into the anonymity of the night without answering to anyone. Sometimes, if his shift was slow, I'd come early and hang out with him, sit in the back room, sip a soda, laugh over dumb inside jokes. He'd show me strange customer receipts or tell me about the old man who bought scratchers in stacks and muttered to himself the whole time. That night, early October, the air had that tight, pricking chill, the kind that makes your skin feel too small. I'd forgotten my hoodie, so I grabbed one of Ryan's extras from the back seat. An oversized crew neck from high school, soft from age, smelling faintly like engine oil and cinnamon gum. I pulled into the side lot of the Quick Mart, like always. The building had 3 security cameras, all facing forward, which left the side delivery lot a blind spot. That night, it wasn't empty. A white Chevy pickup sat a few spots down. Fairly new, clean, not lifted like most of the local trucks. Its engine was off. Its lights were dead. I didn't think much of it until I stepped out. He was leaning against the truck like he'd been waiting. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. White guy. Tall, but not unusually so. Jeans, flannel shirt, no jacket despite the cold. His face was clean-shaven, his hair neatly combed. Too neat, too sterile for a man idling outside a gas station at midnight. I had to pass him to reach the front doors. I figured he'd ignore me, maybe nod. Instead, he shifted into my path. "Hey," he said. Voice casual, like he was asking the time. I slowed, my feet heavy against the cracked pavement. "Yeah?" "Truck won't start," he said. "You know anything about engines?" "Not really. Sorry." I forced a polite smile, my breath frosting in the air. "You sure?" He leaned forward slightly. "Could really use a hand. Battery might be dead." I gestured toward the gas station doors. "My boyfriend's inside. He might know more." His face flickered, barely perceptible, but there. "Boyfriend, huh?" "Yeah." I stepped to move past. He shifted again, not blocking me directly, but close enough that brushing his sleeve seemed inevitable. "It'll only take a second," he said, voice lower now. "Just need someone to hold the hood open while I try the ignition." "I really can't help you," I said, firmer. "I'm cold. I'm not good with cars." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Doesn't take much skill to stand still." My chest went tight. It wasn't the words. It was the way he said them. Like he wasn't asking. Like he was measuring me. I didn't answer. I walked fast. Past him, my heartbeat rattling louder than the neon hum. Inside, the Quick Mart was nearly empty. Ryan was behind the counter, counting bills. He looked up and smiled, but the expression slipped when he saw my face. "Everything okay?" he asked, stepping out from behind the register. "There's a guy by a white pickup out back," I whispered. "He said his truck won't start. He's acting weird." Ryan didn't hesitate. He shrugged on his jacket and came outside with me, but the pickup was gone, not idling away. Gone. Tires screeched faintly in the distance, fading into the dark. We stood there staring at the empty lot. The air felt colder. Ryan rubbed his palms together, eyes narrowing. "You didn't go near it, right?" "No," I said quickly. "Good." That word clung to me. Not smart, not thanks for being careful. Just good, like he already knew something I didn't. I was about to press him when Ryan bent down, frowning. There, in the dirt beside the wall where the man had stood, was a slim black object. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. A lockpick, not a key, not a tool. A thin steel pick with a rubber handle. My stomach dropped. Ryan's voice was hushed. He wasn't waiting for a jump, he was waiting for a door. That was the beginning. The man didn't vanish. He multiplied. Or maybe it just felt that way the longer I looked. A week later, I saw another white pickup. Same model, same trim, parked across from our apartment. Never long. An hour, maybe less. Sometimes with plates, sometimes without. Then the call started. Always after midnight, always silent. One evening at the grocery store, I spotted the truck idling by the lot exit. When I stepped back inside, it peeled out. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, plates when I could see them. I didn't want to be paranoid. I wanted to be prepared. Ryan was skeptical until he saw the truck near his work. After that, he changed. "Maybe we should call someone," he said. "Who?" I snapped. "The cops? They'll say he's shopping." But we called anyway. The officer sighed. "Unless he threatens you directly or trespasses, there's not much we can do." So we bought cameras. Small, hidden. One facing the street, one over the stairs. The first week, nothing. The second, motion triggered at 2:13 a.m. A tall figure walked past the building, paused, looked up at our window, then gone. That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did Ryan. A flaw of mine, one I never thought mattered, became everything. I have a tattoo, small, black inked, just above my right wrist, a crow in flight. My one rebellion, a secret I thought was mine. One morning, After another sleepless night, I went to my car. My breath caught. There, scratched faintly into the dust on my driver's side door, was a crude drawing. A crow, wings spread wide. He'd seen it. He'd been close enough to touch. I scrubbed it off with shaking hands, my eyes stinging. The night it all came to a head, Ryan was gone, visiting his sister 2 hours away. I stayed behind for work the next morning. I locked every window, double-checked the door, left the hallway light on. At 3:07 a.m., the motion sensor chimed. I crept to the curtain, peeled it back an inch. The truck, parked across the street, door open, no one inside, until I saw him, standing on the curb, staring up, at me. I jerked back like the window burned me. My chest heaved, my hands shook. I called 911, whispering, "There's a man outside my apartment, he's been following me. White truck, he's here now." The dispatcher's voice was calm. "Is he armed?" "I don't know, he's just standing there. He's been doing this for weeks." "Officers are en route. Stay on the line." I didn't hear the rest, because he wasn't on the street anymore. He was at the stairs. I heard the boards creak. Slow, careful, then silence. Until the knock, not on the door, on the window. The curtain shifted. A shadow slid across. "I know you're in there," he said, voice low, almost conversational. "I'm not gonna hurt you. Just want to talk." My heart stopped. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Then, the rattle of the doorknob, not rushed, measured, metal clinking softly, testing, and then the scrape. A tool, in the lock. I lunged for the deadbolt, forcing it tighter, hands slick with sweat, my chest pressed to the wood, every nerve screaming. The lock wobbled, clicked, almost gave. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the couch, clutching it so tight my knuckles split. 2 minutes, the dispatcher had said. But 2 minutes stretched into a lifetime. The knob turned again, harder. The lock slid. Then the sirens. Blue light flooded the room. Boots pounded the stairs. The scraping stopped. By the time police reached the door, he was gone. The truck was stolen. Plates, fake. Inside, nothing. No prints. The cops nodded, promised patrols, and left. Ryan moved back immediately. Slept by the front door for 3 weeks, bat in hand. But the man never returned. We moved a month later. Left that apartment, that town, all of it behind. But trauma doesn't leave. Even now, on empty roads at night, I think about that white pickup. About his eyes, not angry or pleading, just calculating. Weeks later, in a new city, I turned on the news. A woman 2 counties over. Same age as me. Same kind of town. Same truck. She hadn't been as lucky. Her apartment window had been forced open. Her body was found 2 days later. The description matched. Late 30s, white, flannel shirt, clean shaven, too neat. And I realized something cold. It was never about me. He was looking for someone. And for a while he thought that someone was me. But he moved on. And now, every time I see headlights in the dark, I wonder, how close is he to finding his next girl? And will she realize in time that the knock at her window isn't just a knock? I didn't mind working late, at least not at first, but even on my very first night I could feel something wrong clinging to the edges of the darkness. Something I couldn't name but couldn't shake either. My name is Claire, and when I was 18, freshly graduated from high school, the world felt wide open, full of possibility. I had my own car, my first real job, and for the first time in my life, the taste of independence was mine. It wasn't glamorous, just a closing shift at a local home goods store outside of Lexington, Kentucky. But the job gave me money that was mine, evenings that were mine, and long stretches of dark roads where I thought I could breathe without anyone watching. I told myself I liked the night shifts. Customers dwindled to nothing after 8, leaving only the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional soft music playing over the speakers. There was something intoxicating about locking up the store at midnight, slipping into the driver's seat and watching the world shrink in the rearview mirror as I sped down empty highways. There's a stillness at that hour you can't find during the day. Parking lots become abandoned stages, roads stretch like veins through a silent body, and the sky above feels endless, like it's swallowing sound itself. I convinced myself I belonged to that stillness, that maybe the dark and I had an understanding, but my mom didn't see it that way. On my very first shift, before I pulled out of our driveway, she leaned in through the window, her voice carrying that strange authority I couldn't quite rebel against. Don't let your tank run low. If you need gas, fill up before work. Never after. Never at night. Her eyes caught mine, sharp and insistent. She wasn't joking. She meant it. I remember rolling my eyes, forcing a laugh. "Mom, I'll be fine. This isn't New York City." She didn't smile back. "Claire, you're small. People notice that. You look younger than you are. Don't make yourself an easy target." I shrugged her off, but her words lingered in the corners of my mind, repeating like a warning bell I didn't want to admit I heard. For the first couple weeks, I listened. I fueled up in the afternoons, always careful, always aware of the glow of the gaslight. But habits dull, routines take over, independence makes you careless. And one night, the world reminded me just how easily it could swallow me whole. It was 12:16 a.m. on a Thursday when the gas light came on, soft and orange against the dashboard. My stomach sank. I cursed under my breath, glancing at the needle that had slipped dangerously low. I was still miles from home. I took the next exit, scanning for any sign of light in the dark sprawl of backroads. That's when I saw it. Scott's fuel depot. Not a chain, not a place I'd ever been, but it glowed in the distance like a beacon. The lot was nearly empty. One car sat by the air pump, its engine off, its windows too dark to see inside. Fluorescent lights cast their sterile glow across the cracked pavement, pooling shadows in the corners. I pulled up to pump number 2, swiped my card, and started fueling. $10. Enough to get home. Enough to promise myself I'd do better tomorrow. The air smelled sharp, metallic, with a faint trace of cigarette smoke clinging to the damp night. I crossed my arms against the chill and waited. That's when I felt it. The distinct sensation of eyes on me. I turned quickly, my heartbeat sharp in my ears. But the lot was still. The car by the air pump hadn't moved. Inside the station, a tall, lanky clerk with a messy beard leaned behind the counter, his face lit blue by a small TV. He didn't even glance at me. Paranoia, I told myself. Late-night nerves. Nothing more. The pump clicked off. I grabbed the receipt, screwed the cap back on, and reached for my door handle. That's when the intercom crackled alive. "Ma'am, there was an issue with your payment. Can you come inside?" The voice was distorted, metallic. It made me freeze. I looked toward the store. The clerk was standing now, staring at me through the glass. One hand lifted slightly, a beckon. I frowned, raising my receipt. "I have it right here. Payment went through." The intercom hissed again. "Printed wrong. Need to run it again inside." His voice was too fast, too flat. Not a hint of apology, not even irritation, just urgency. And then I saw his eyes, wide, staring. And beneath that, something sharper. Fear. I hesitated, pulled my phone out, opened my banking app. The charge was there. $10. Clear. "I'm good," I called. "I'm not coming in." His mouth moved again, but the intercom stayed silent. Then suddenly, he slammed his hand against the glass. Hard. He grabbed a piece of paper and a Sharpie, scrawling in frantic slashes. He pressed it flat against the glass. "Backseat, don't open door." For a moment, my mind refused to process it. Then I turned. Slowly. The rear passenger door of my car was cracked open. I ran. I sprinted across the lot, breath tearing from my chest, and shoved myself inside the station. The clerk locked the door behind me, grabbing my arm and pulling me down behind the counter. In his other hand, he held a handgun, low but steady. "Stay down," he whispered, his voice taut with tension. His eyes flicked to the monitors above the register. I followed his gaze. Black and white screens showed the pumps, the lot, the dumpster. At first, nothing. Then movement. From my back seat, a figure unfolded, tall, hooded. His gray windbreaker glimmered faint under the lights. He moved low, deliberate, like someone trained not to be seen. He didn't look toward the store, didn't run. He slipped into the shadows at the edge of the lot and vanished. The clerk, Marcus, was already on the phone, speaking in clipped whispers to 911. I sat shaking, the cold weight of realization sinking deeper with every second. I would have driven off. I would have sealed myself inside the car with him. That night should have ended with relief, with gratitude, with police sirens and safety. But it didn't. The police came, searched the lot, the woods, the highway shoulder. They found nothing. No prints, no trace. The man had evaporated into the night. But something lingered. It started with the smell. That damp fabric and sweat clung to my car no matter how much I cleaned it. Then came the noises, soft clicks in the night, doors creaking open just slightly wider than I remembered leaving them. I told myself it was my imagination, trauma, nerves. But when I woke some mornings, the air in my bedroom carried that same faint cologne. Marcus told me quietly a week later, his voice low like he was afraid the shadows might overhear. "I saw him before you pulled in, by the dumpster. He wasn't watching the store, he was watching for you." I couldn't shake the thought that maybe he hadn't been after money, or my car, or even me, not in any human way. That maybe he was just waiting. Weeks blurred together. Sleep slipped through my fingers. I started checking every door, every lock, every shadow. I checked my backseat every single time, even in daylight. I started to hear things I couldn't explain. Sometimes when the house was quiet, the static of the intercom would creep into my ears, faint and hollow. "Ma'am, there was an issue with your payment." Sometimes I woke to the distinct feeling of breath on my neck, even when I was alone. And sometimes just before falling asleep, I thought I saw him, not the man, but something darker, something shapeless, reflected faintly in the glass of my window. Watching, waiting. The scariest part isn't that he wanted to hurt me. The scariest part is that I still don't know if he was even real. Maybe there was a man that night, one who wanted to trap me, one who vanished before the police could catch him. Or maybe there was something else, something that slid out of my back seat and attached itself to me, something that feeds on fear. Even now, years later, I still check my back seat before getting in the car. I never get gas at night. I never let my tank run low. But sometimes when the night is too still and the air smells faintly of damp fabric, I hear the intercom crackle alive inside my head. "Ma'am, there was an issue with your payment." And I wonder, what if the darkness didn't just want a ride? What if it wanted me to drive it home? There are some things you walk away from in life that don't actually stay behind you. I learned that late, the hard way. Back in Denver, I was a mid-level sales analyst working in a data brokerage firm that danced along the edges of legality. I wasn't innocent, no one was, but I wasn't the mastermind either. We sold consumer profiles, age, habits, purchase histories, location pings, and spun the data into revenue like cotton candy. Then a leak hit Reddit. Internal emails, usage reports, client names. No one went to jail, but some of us were pushed out so the company could say they handled it internally. I was one of the fall guys. Afterward, it felt like Denver turned its back on me. People who used to wave in the lobby looked away. Recruiters ghosted. One guy I thought was a friend told me, flat out, that I wasn't safe to have on his team. And just like that, the world shrank. So I packed up what was left of my self-worth and drove until the map ran out of red lines. That landed me in Missoula, Montana. Quiet, wide, and detached. I rented a one-bedroom off Brook Street, nothing fancy, and took a night shift job at Hollow Trail Gas Mart, just east of the rail spur. The place was barely open, a narrow store attached to 3 old pumps, surrounded by fields and pine scrub. The air smelled like pine sap and diesel most nights, but I didn't mind. I told myself it was just temporary, a lay-low job, no resumes, no exposure. The owner, Hank, was a retired mechanic who barely kept the lights on. We rarely spoke, which was perfect. I worked 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6 nights a week. My job was to keep the coffee warm, wipe the counters, and make sure no one broke in or passed out behind the lotto counter. At first, it was the most peaceful I'd felt in years, but routines, I've learned, can become cages, or worse, mirrors. He started showing up Thursday nights, always between 10:10 and 10:15. Tall guy, maybe early 60s, wore the same weather-worn flannel over a white tee, jeans that hung a little loose, and boots that had been resoled more than once. He had a neat gray beard, soft but unreadable eyes, and never carried a phone. I started calling him Thursday in my head. He'd buy the same 2 cans of that awful canned black coffee, cold, bitter, metallic, and a scratch-off ticket. And he'd chat. First it was the weather, fires in Canada, rain patterns. One time he talked about elk migration and how it used to come closer to the rail line. I nodded along, kept it polite. I figured he was lonely. You don't judge folks like that in small towns. But then he started saying things that didn't sit right. One night he asked, "You get that green gum restocked yet? The spearmint?" I looked up fast. I had been looking for that exact pack the week before. I'd even written a note about it and left it under the counter, but I'd never said a word out loud. Another night he said, "Quiet shift, huh, Craig?" That was my name, sure, but I never wore a tag. It wasn't printed on anything. I hadn't told him. He said it like we'd known each other a long time. The worst part? He never said these things like they were guesses. He said them like they were facts he'd already verified. That's when the job stopped feeling safe. And I started watching the clock every Thursday, waiting for 10:10 like it was a knock at the door I wasn't ready to answer. The next few weeks I played it cool, but inside, I was unraveling. I kept telling myself he was just observant, harmless. But I started hiding my personal items behind locked drawers. I unplugged the security monitor when I wasn't looking at it. I switched out the store's phone ringer so it didn't make me jump every time. Then one Thursday I called in sick. At 10 p.m. sharp, I parked across the street in the gravel shoulder, headlights off, hoodie pulled up, earbuds in but no music playing. I just sat and watched through the drizzle-streaked windshield. At 10:11 he showed. He didn't go to the cooler, didn't grab coffee, didn't even glance at the candy. He walked straight to the security counter where the monitors sat, just stood there, stared at the screen. 1 minute, still as glass. Then he left, calm, like it was nothing. When he was gone, I sprinted inside with the spare key Hank gave me, pulled the feed. That stretch from 10:11 to 10:12 was static, not glitchy, not choppy, just flat, hard static, unpausable, unzoomable, like someone had wiped the tape. I tried every trick I knew, every scrub. Nothing. That was the first night I realized something was being done on purpose. The next morning, the landline rang. We rarely used it. Hank had a cell, and the only people who ever called were delivery reps. I answered on the second ring, my fingers sweating against the receiver. No one spoke. Then, a clear, monotone voice, recorded, not live, came through. "He's not just watching you. He's remembering you." Click. Silence. I stood there breathing like I'd run a mile. I played the message twice on the voicemail log. Same calm voice, same words. Nothing else. I wanted to believe it was a prank, a kid with a modulator, a weird coincidence, but I couldn't stop thinking about how specific it was. That word, remembering, felt heavy, like a threat in disguise. The next few shifts, I operated on instinct. I stopped checking the back room unless absolutely necessary. I avoided the cameras unless I needed to. I didn't answer the phone on the first ring anymore, and I stopped wearing the blue flannel I'd worn those early shifts. The one Thursday always wore it too. About 2 weeks later, I came home from work around 6:30 a.m. It had just started to snow, powder fine like flour. As I fumbled for my key, I noticed something under the door, a folded scrap of paper, the edge fluttering in the cold air. I picked it up. It was written in blocky, precise handwriting, pen on the back of a scratch-off ticket. Your shift on September 18th will end with you forgetting something very important. Don't bother looking for it. It will already be too late. No name. No other message. I just stood there in the hall holding it. The snow in my hair, my hands shaking. I turned around so fast I nearly fell, half expecting him to be at the stairwell. But I was alone. I didn't sleep that weekend, just watched the date crawl closer. September 18th. It sat in my calendar like a funeral notice. I tried to tell myself it was a mind game, just weirdness. I even wrote a note to myself to not forget to clock in, set alarms on my phone, taped a sticky note to the inside of my windshield. I walked into work that Thursday like a soldier going back to the front. The first half of the night passed in total silence. A couple truckers stopped in for jerky and water. One guy bought a phone charger and left. But by 3 a.m., I felt the dread creeping in, like something had been slipping away while I wasn't watching. Then it hit me. I hadn't clocked in. I checked the log. Nothing. No punch. No timestamp. The system treated me like I'd never arrived. I stared at the register, cold washing through me. I swore I'd punched in. I remembered doing it. Didn't I? I texted Hank. Hey, got it fixed. Came in late, glitch maybe. He replied an hour later. Didn't get any alert. I logged you in manually. All good. No mention of the message. No reference to anything being off. That was worse somehow. Like he didn't want to touch it. Like he knew. I finished the shift in a fog. When I got home, I took off my jacket, the blue flannel, and stared at it. Just fabric, buttons and cotton. But it felt tainted. I threw it in the back of my closet and haven't worn it since. Now I sleep with the lights on. I unplugged the landline before bed. I started journaling every shift, logging everything. What I saw, heard, touched. I need records because memory isn't enough. Not when someone else is using it against you. Because forgetting something isn't just a mistake, it's sometimes the only way they can get inside. So here's the question I still don't have an answer to. What if the worst things aren't the ones you remember, but the ones you were made to forget? They say the worst things in life don't announce themselves. They don't scream or slam doors or even leave bruises you can point to. Sometimes they just sit, quiet, like a bad smell in a locked car. You notice it too late, and then it's in your lungs, under your skin, in your clothes. It clings. That's how it was for me. There wasn't one single day where my life blew apart. It unraveled slowly, thread by thread. I didn't wake up one morning a failure. I arrived there inch by inch. I was 32 and newly sober when I took the graveyard shift at Maple Cross Gas Deli. Not because I wanted to, because it was the only place that didn't ask too many questions about the gap in my resume or the tired look in my eyes. The manager was a guy named Brian, pudgy, always reeking of vape juice and coffee. He hired me after a 5-minute interview in which he mostly talked about the Cleveland Browns. Told me the last night clerk left mid-shift after finding someone passed out on the floor of the beer fridge. He said it like it was funny. I told him I could handle it. The job wasn't glamorous. 3 pumps, 1 register, a deli case that had seen better years and better meat. But I needed the money and I needed the routine. I told myself that if I could just make it 90 days sober, I'd start to feel human again. Get my own place. Stop sleeping in the backseat of my Honda. Stop pretending I was crashing at a cousin's place out in Groveport, a cousin who didn't exist. Most nights were uneventful. Cops grabbing energy drinks, truckers stretching their legs, the occasional couple too drunk to remember what brand of smokes they liked. I kept my head down, kept the floors clean, restocked the jerky and chips, and tried to believe the worst was behind me. Then came pump 3. The first time I noticed the SUV, it was just after 2 a.m. early April, one of those damp Ohio nights where the wind makes your bones ache. White Toyota Highlander, maybe 10 years old. It pulled up to pump 3, just close enough for me to see the silhouette of the driver through the window. The engine stayed on, headlights stayed on, but the driver didn't move. No gas, no window roll down, just sat there. I figured he was checking his GPS or texting. People do weird things at night. You stop asking questions after a while. But the next night he came back. Same SUV, same pump, same exact time. By the third night, my chest tightened the moment I saw those headlights sweep across the front windows. By the fourth, I knew the plate number by heart, except I couldn't see it. There was always just enough glare to obscure it. By the fifth, I stopped pretending it was normal. I tried brushing it off. I even joked about it to a nurse who came in on her way to shift change. "Got a regular now," I said. "Doesn't buy anything, just stares from his car like I owe him money." She laughed, but her eyes darted out the window. "That's not funny," she said. "Men like that don't just stare for fun." On the sixth night, I went outside. It was cold enough that my breath came out in tight puffs. I crossed my arms and walked to the edge of the lit area. "Can I help you with something?" I called out, trying to sound firm. Not scared. The window rolled down halfway. The man was pale, mid-40s, buzz cut, no facial hair, wearing a nondescript jacket. His eyes didn't blink. He looked at me like I was a static image on a screen. "You're not supposed to be here tonight," he said. And then he rolled the window up. That's all. No shouting. No threats. Just that single sentence. I went back inside and locked the doors. I sat behind the counter watching the security feed until the sun rose. He didn't leave until almost 4. Just sat there. Watching. The next day, I told Brian. He shrugged. He probably got dumped. Or maybe he's waiting for someone. Lot of sad sacks out there. I called the non-emergency line anyway. A cruiser rolled by a couple hours later. The guy was gone. The officer, a kid who looked like he hadn't even finished his paperwork training yet, looked at the footage and said there wasn't much they could do. No license plate. No crime. Just some guy sitting in a car. "You sure he didn't say anything threatening?" the officer asked, tapping his pen against the counter. "He said I wasn't supposed to be here." He smirked. "Maybe you weren't." He laughed. I didn't. The man didn't show up for the next 3 days. I tried to believe it was over. I mopped the floors, joked with the morning shift, even got a coffee with a guy from group therapy. For a few days, I felt okay, like maybe things were settling again. Then, just past 2 a.m., the SUV came back. Only this time, he got out. I froze behind the counter, heart hammering so hard it made my ears ring. The man didn't look at me. He walked across the lot toward the air pump, crouched down, and started doing something I couldn't quite see. One hand in his jacket pocket, the other fiddling with the air valve. He stayed crouched for exactly 17 minutes, not moving. Then he stood, walked back to the SUV, and drove off without so much as a glance in my direction. The next morning, I rewound the footage. The security feed skipped. A glitch. One frame between 2:18 and 2:19 where his face looked wrong, stretched, too wide, like someone had dragged it out with a digital brush. It wasn't human for that 1 second, just a smear of skin and shadow and something else. I chalked it up to a compression issue. The cameras were old, cheap, dust on the lens maybe. At 6:35 a.m., a kid pulled up in a beat-up Civic and tried to fill his tires. I heard the boom from inside like a shotgun blast. I ran out, already dialing 911. His left hand was shredded, skin peeling back like strips of red paper. He kept screaming about his fingers. One of them was dangling by a tendon. At the hospital, they said he'd lose 2. I checked the pump after they took him away. The valve had been cross-threaded. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to cause catastrophic failure once the pressure climbed. Someone did it on purpose. The cops came again. I showed them the footage, showed them the glitch. They didn't buy it. "This footage looks tampered with," one of them said. "No," I replied. "It's just a glitch." "Uh-huh. You sleep much lately?" "Not really." "Maybe that's your answer." The next night, I found the sticky note, folded under the monitor. I would have seen it the second I booted up, written in my own handwriting. "You didn't stop him. It's still yours to carry." I didn't remember writing it, but it was mine. The curled loop of the I, the hard slash on the T, my hand. I checked the security feed again. Pump 3 was gone. The label had changed. It now read, April, repeating. I hadn't changed the labels. Nobody else had access. And something inside me cracked, not like a break you can set. More like a dam finally giving way after years of silent pressure. I didn't drink. Didn't use. But I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye. Flashes. Glitches in real life. My own face in the convex mirror looked off. The skin too smooth. The expression not quite mine. I stopped sleeping. I'd wake up gasping, shirt soaked in sweat, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. Every time I saw an air pump, my throat tightened. Every time I heard a car idle too long, my stomach turned. I called my sponsor, left a voicemail. He didn't call back. 4 nights later, I watched the monitor like it was my only lifeline. It was past 2, no SUV, no headlights, just a flicker. The label changed again. April. Watching. That's when I knew I had to go. I gave my notice. Brian barely blinked. I packed up my life, what little of it there was, shoved it into a duffel bag and drove. No destination. Just away. I wound up 2 towns over, sleeping behind a speedway for a week before landing a shift job at an all-night diner. I changed my number, got a P.O. box. I still go to meetings. I still count my sober days, but I don't talk about Maple Cross, not anymore. Sometimes, though, when I pass a gas station late at night, I glance at the pumps, just in case. Because the part that still eats at me isn't the man in the SUV. It isn't even what he said. It's that somewhere inside me, part of me believes he was right. That I wasn't supposed to be there. And that I still am. What if some burdens aren't lifted but transferred? What if the moment you see something wrong and do nothing, you inherit it? So tell me, if you were standing at pump 3, would you walk away or would you watch? There was a time I thought the graveyard shift was a kind of blessing. The world slept and I slipped through the hours like a shadow. No rush, no noise, no questions. Just the buzz of fluorescent lights, a coffee machine that wheezed like a dying animal, and the soft hum of a radio stuck on a station that only played mid-century detective shows. Some people crave purpose. I craved quiet. My name's Noah Darby. I'm 26 now, but for a while, I felt nailed to 25, like time had paused the second my twin brother died. Nate. He was the loud one, the funny one, the one who made a room feel alive just by walking into it. People remembered Nate. Me? I was just the guy who worked nights at a Sunoco on the edge of town, counting scratch-offs and cleaning out the slushy machine. Nate died May 3rd of last year, hydroplaned on the west bypass, right into an oak tree. It was raining that night, a heavy spring downpour that made the roads slick as oil. He was supposed to pick me up for a midnight movie, but I'd picked up an extra shift instead. We argued about it the night before. He told me I worked too much. Said life wasn't meant to be spent under flickering lights and security cameras. That was the last conversation we had. I live above a laundromat 2 doors down from the station. 1 room. Window barely opens. Mattress so thin you can feel the plywood underneath. But it was close and cheap, and more importantly, it was quiet. I didn't need much after Nate, just routine. That routine cracked open April 30th. It was just past midnight when a guy walked in, tall, scruffy denim jacket with one sleeve torn at the cuff. He grabbed 2 Monster energy drinks, came up to the counter and said, "Bet I'm your most exciting visitor tonight, huh?" He laughed like he was the only one who got the joke. 30 minutes later, he came in again. Same jacket, same drinks, same line, word for word. I stared at him too long, trying to see if I'd imagined it. He looked me straight in the eye like nothing was wrong. At first, I chalked it up to being tired. Sleep was elusive lately. Some nights I'd lie on the hardwood floor of my room just to feel something solid. The soft thrum of dryers from downstairs came through the vents, constant as a heartbeat. I started keeping a shift journal, thinking maybe I was just misremembering things. Maybe I'd confused the days. Or maybe grief was warping reality in ways I didn't understand. But then the cameras glitched. Between 12:10 and 1:10 a.m., every single night the security feeds would stutter. Then they'd reverse, not flicker, not lag, reverse. 4 minutes and 14 seconds exactly. Like someone hit rewind, clean, seamless. I tried pulling up the footage later. That block was always gone, like it had been cut out with surgical precision. Then the van showed up. White, unmarked, except for duct tape across the back doors spelling one word, again. It rolled into the lot at 12:42 a.m. Sat there idling for 6 minutes, no delivery, no driver, no movement. Then it pulled away. I called our supplier the next morning, asked if they'd changed the delivery schedule. The guy on the line sounded confused. "We stopped all overnight routes last year," he said. "Too many risks." I didn't argue, just hung up. Then I checked the footage again. Same van, same time. Only this time I saw myself step outside, blink. And then suddenly I was back behind the counter, watching myself on the screen like it was some live feed from a dream I never signed up for. No memory of coming back inside. Just the cold, jarring cut of missing time. That was the first time I knew something was wrong with the nights. Truly wrong. I tried to act normal. Stocked candy bars. Wiped down the soda fountain. Smiled at Janine, one of our regulars, when she came in for her usual menthols and cherry soda. But something had shifted. Her eyes lingered too long, like she was trying to recognize me through a fog. "You said that last time," she muttered as she handed me the cash. "What?" "Right here. Same gum display behind you. You said, maybe we're creatures of habit." I forced a smile. "Well, maybe we are." She stared a second too long. "No," she whispered. "You said that last time too." She took her change and left without another word. That night I couldn't sit still. The pump alarm started going off. Short beeps like someone lifting the nozzle, but the lot was empty. Every time. No cars, no wind. Just those single beeps, always in that same strange rhythm. One night all the pumps shut off. 12:13 a.m. The air outside was dense, still, like standing underwater. Then the pumps started lighting up, one by one. Pump 2, beep. Pump 4, beep. Pump 7, beep. Pump 3, beep. Nate's birthday, February 4th, 1997, 2:04, 7:03. I just stood there, frozen. My breath felt wrong in my chest. I could smell something faint in the air, burnt toast and antifreeze. The next morning I checked transaction logs, nothing recorded. No pumps used, no customers in or out, like that hour didn't happen. Receipts started printing with the wrong date. Always 1 year off, May 2022. I checked my journal. The customers, the conversations, even the radio segments, they were all looping. The weather, the bugs smearing the windows, the same bird landing on the same lamppost, like someone had copied and pasted a week of my life over itself. Then one night, the radio crackled and played an ad for a pizza place that shut down last summer. I blinked, and the register reverted to the old POS interface we'd stopped using in July. The screen glowed with old colors I hadn't seen in months. The freezer hummed louder than I remembered. I turned toward the freezer aisle and saw him. Nate. Not a hallucination, not a memory. His reflection in the glass door, standing inside the freezer, waving, his skin pale, face frosted over like he'd been there for months, smiling, calm, present. I stumbled back and hit the cooler shelf. By the time I looked again, the glass had fogged over. No image, no trace. I checked the calendar. May 3rd, 2022, the day he died. That night broke something in me. I sat behind the counter and waited, lights off, heart in my throat, just waiting. At 12:42 a.m., the van returned. It didn't idle, didn't make a sound, just parked. I stepped outside, every nerve screaming. The back doors were open. Inside, nothing but a mirror. A full-length pane of glass bolted to the floor. I walked closer, looked in. Nate. He wasn't smiling this time. He looked drained, tired, hollow. He mouthed something slowly. "You weren't supposed to take my place." Then I blinked, and I was behind the counter. Register reset. 12:03 a.m., like I'd never left. I quit 2 weeks later. My manager found me curled up in the walk-in cooler holding a sticky note that said, "Stay out of the loop." I don't remember writing it. The next day, I found Nate's hospital wristband in my coat pocket. It was still warm. I live further out now. No night shifts, no cameras, but sometimes, just before bed, I think I hear that freezer hum, or see the reflection of someone who isn't there. I think the loop goes on, just not with me. Maybe someone else is stuck now. Here's what I want to ask you. If time offered you one moment back, just one, would you take it, even if it meant never leaving? The highway feels different after a certain number of miles, like it starts to become a living thing growing into your bones. I've logged over 1 million miles behind the wheel, maybe more. I don't count anymore. I used to, back when I was married, when I had someone to send postcards to. Now it's just the road, the hum of tires, the low murmur of talk radio at night. There's a kind of peace in the monotony, until it cracks, until one small thing doesn't behave the way it should. There's this place I always hit just past midnight, Pine Valley Fuel, middle of nowhere off Route 219 in West Virginia, right about the halfway point between my ex's place in Chillicothe and my one-bedroom apartment in Wheeling. Not quite a truck stop, not quite a convenience store. It's the kind of place where the vending machines are mostly empty and the ceiling tiles sag a little from old leaks, but the bathrooms are weirdly spotless. That's what made it trustworthy to me. Clean sinks, quiet lot, decent coffee. It was reliable. That night in March, everything was routine. At first. I rolled in a few minutes before midnight. I remember because I glanced at the clock and thought, might be nice to get some shut-eye in the cab after the bathroom. The parking lot was empty except for one minivan, probably abandoned there. I grabbed my thermos, stepped inside. Fluorescents buzzing, cooler humming, radio playing some old Toby Keith song nobody under 50 listens to anymore. Same as always. But when I hit the bathroom door, the air changed. It sounds stupid to say that. The air changed, but it really did. Cooler, heavier, like I walked through a membrane of pressure. I chalked it up to fatigue. I'd been driving nearly 9 hours. My shoulders ached. My left leg was stiff from cruise control. I went into the far stall, shut the door, and sat down just to breathe for a minute. Then the lights went out. Not a flicker, not a surge. They just snapped off, all at once. Total blackness for about 2 seconds, long enough for me to fumble for my phone. Then came this low, pulsing red glow, like backup lighting, but wrong. It came from above the mirror, not the ceiling. Then I heard it, a slow, dragging scrape across the tile floor. Not footsteps, something heavier, deliberate, like a wet boot being pulled across the ground. I froze. My breath caught somewhere in my chest. I leaned forward, carefully peering through the narrow crack between the stall door and the floor. Nothing. But then, a voice, low, raspy, right next to me. They locked it again, My heart jerked. It wasn't my voice, and it wasn't coming from outside the bathroom. It was from the next stall over. I sat up straight, unsure whether to respond or just stay quiet. I finally said, "Hey, you okay, man?" No answer, just the faintest rustle. Then, "They lock it after midnight. You shouldn't have come in." I was wide awake now. My fingers gripped the metal latch so tight my knuckles hurt. I shifted slightly, just enough to glance down into the neighboring stall. No shoes, no legs, nothing. Just an empty concrete floor and the faint sound of something ticking, like a watch or a clock, but slower. I stood, jiggled the latch. It wouldn't budge. I knocked on the door with my palm. "Hey, anyone out there? Door's stuck." No response. From the hallway, the muffled sound of the radio kept playing, warbled by static now. Faint music, half melted into a thick hiss. I was sweating now. I looked behind me, and that's when I saw it. Carved into the back wall of the stall, behind the toilet. Deep gouges in the wood, freshly done, the edges still raw and dark. You can scream. The night staff doesn't check anymore. I took a step back, trying not to panic. I reached for my phone, turned on the flashlight. It flickered once, then the camera app refused to open. I switched to voice memo and hit record. "Travis Heller, March 18th, Pine Valley fuel stop off Route 219 somethings." The app saved the file, but not under today's date. It labeled it March 12th. I hadn't used the app that day. I hadn't been anywhere near West Virginia then. I checked again. March 12th. I hit record a second time. Same result. Then a third. Still March 12th. That's when the voice returned. Same stall, same barely there whisper. "Travis." And I lost it. I rammed my shoulder against the stall door, once, twice. It gave on the third try, throwing me into the main room. But it wasn't the same room I entered. The red glow was gone. Now the lights overhead were sickly yellow, flickering with a kind of chemical intensity. The whole place looked older, decayed, walls stained, sink chipped, paper towel dispenser gone. I stumbled toward the door. The cashier, a pale woman with long silver hair and grayish eyes, stood behind the counter, not looking up. She was humming something, a lullaby maybe. "Men's room's broken," she said. I stared at her, stunned. "What?" "Been out of order all week." Still not looking at me. "Don't worry about it." I ran outside, breath short, heart ready to punch out of my chest. Climbed into the cab, slammed the lock down, and floored it out of there like a man on fire. But here's the worst part. When I passed back through Pine Valley that morning, I turned around. I had to. Call it pride or stubbornness, or maybe I needed to prove it didn't happen. The sun was up. Birds were chirping. Everything looked normal. Fresh paint. Coffee brewing. Cashier was a middle-aged guy with a friendly smile. No trace of the woman. I walked to the bathroom door and froze. There were 2 signs taped up. One said, "Do not use after midnight, door locks automatically." And below it, a smaller one in red. "Last incident, Travis Heller, March 2021. March 2021, a whole year ago. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think straight. I hadn't told anyone my name. Not the cashier, not a manager. Nobody. And yet, somehow, it was part of the station's official posting. The new cashier must have seen the look on my face. "Someone messing with the sign?" he asked. I didn't answer. Just backed out, got in the truck and drove. But it didn't stop there. That night, 3 hours south in Summersville, I pulled off into a motel to calm down. I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. I checked it. A new recording in my voice memo app. Same voice. Mine. "They lock it after midnight. Timestamp, March 2021. Same time, same tone. Calm, steady, not exhausted like I was now." I didn't remember making it. I didn't remember stopping there that year. But I must have. Or did I? I reached out to a buddy in Elkins, a firefighter, asked him to swing by Pine Valley and check the sign. He texted a photo. Sign was still there. My name. March 2021. No mention of anything recent. From that moment, something in me cracked. I started spiraling. My panic attacks, which had been maybe once a month, were now daily. I gave up long-haul gigs, started doing regional runs, always daytime, always with someone tracking me. Even now when I try to sleep, I wake up at exactly 11:58 p.m., without fail, as if my body's branded by that time. Every sound becomes a whisper. Every creak feels like dragging footsteps. Every breath carries the fear that my own voice will start echoing back something I don't remember saying. My therapist thinks it's trauma, a memory fracture, maybe a dissociative episode. She believes the mind can bend in ways we don't understand, especially under stress. But when I told her about the sign, her tone shifted. "There's something else happening here," she said. "Stay away from that place." So I do. I haven't been back. I avoid that stretch of 219 entirely, but the memory clings to me like smoke. It's not the supernatural that scares me. It's the uncertainty. The idea that maybe I did something that night I can't remember. That maybe I changed that place. Or that place changed me. Last week, I found a public security feed online, Pine Valley's lot. I scrubbed back to March 18th, 2021. There I was, my truck, pulling in at 11:55 p.m., 4 minutes of static. Then I'm sprinting back to the cab. I don't remember any of it. But there I am. All I know now is this. Sometimes the past doesn't stay behind you. Sometimes it waits for you, at a mile marker, a bathroom door, or a whisper that knows your name before you say it. We all carry ghosts. The trick is figuring out whether they're following us, or if we left them somewhere long ago locked behind a door we were never supposed to open. What if the scariest hauntings aren't from the dead, but from pieces of ourselves we lost in the dark? Would you ever go back to see what you left behind? I never thought it would come to this. Not the cardboard boxes or the divorce, not even the storage unit. Those things I could have handled. What I wasn't ready for was the silence. You don't realize how loud a home is until it's empty. After Sarah left and the paperwork was signed, I stayed in the house a few extra weeks, mostly sleeping on a mattress in the living room surrounded by half-filled boxes. It was the little noises that hit hardest, the creak in the hallway, the rattle of the back door when the wind hit just right, the hum of the fridge. All the sounds that used to mean life was happening. Now they just reminded me it wasn't. Iron Gate Self-Storage was about 10 minutes outside Rapid City, on a frontage road you'd miss if you blinked. Wheat fields on one side, a rusted-out RV lot on the other. The place had a quiet sort of sterility to it. Neat rows of units, each with beige roll-up doors and matching metal numbers. It didn't look haunted by anything more than overdue rent or broken plans. The woman in the office wore a pink fleece vest and looked like she'd spent the better part of her life behind a counter. When I first signed the lease, she didn't ask questions, just took my ID, handed me a gate code and said, "Watch your fingers on the doors, they bite." I laughed politely. She didn't. I picked Unit 17 because it was toward the back, near the concrete wall, farthest from the highway. I liked that it felt removed. No traffic, no nosy neighbors. Just me and the occasional sparrow nesting in the eaves. The first week I went there most evenings. I told myself I was sorting through my things, trying to decide what to keep. Really, I just needed something to do after work. Somewhere to be that wasn't the hollow shell of a house I used to share with someone. That's when I noticed it. Unit 41 was directly across from mine. Always cracked open just enough to see inside. Not wide open, never more than a few inches. The first time I thought maybe someone had forgotten to shut it all the way. But it stayed that way, day after day. One time it was open about a foot. The next time, just a sliver, like it was breathing. Inside, I could just barely make out plastic sheeting, Clear, flimsy stuff hanging from the ceiling like a shower curtain in a motel bathroom. And always, in the center of the space, an old chest freezer. White, chipped, the kind you'd find in your grandfather's garage, buried under deer meat and frozen casseroles. And humming. That's what made me pause. The soft, low hum of something running. Cold air seeping out like breath in winter. I knew there were no outlets in these units. I'd tried plugging in a phone charger the week before and found nothing but blank concrete walls. That freezer had no business being powered, and yet it was. The next evening I brought it up casually when I checked in to pay for an extra lock. "That unit across from me," I said. 41. "There's a freezer running in there." The woman didn't look up from her monitor. "Corporate overflow," she muttered. "Yeah, but how's it plugged in?" She paused, met my eyes for the first time. "There are no outlets." "I know, that's what I'm saying. The thing's cold. I heard it." She leaned back in her chair slowly, folding her arms. Her voice flattened. "Sometimes people rig stuff up. Marine batteries, solar panels. It's not allowed, but it happens. As long as your gate code works, you're fine." That was the end of the conversation. I could feel it. But it wasn't the end for me. That night, I sat on my mattress with a half-empty bottle of bourbon and stared at the wall. I should have let it go. Should have just chalked it up to weirdness and moved on. But something about that freezer stuck in my head like a splinter. So I went back. I told myself I'd forgotten a sanding tool. I hadn't, I just wanted to look. The lot was empty when I pulled in. Dusk settling into that pale blue quiet. Crickets chirping in the grass. I parked and walked straight to Unit 17, and I heard it before I reached the door. Music. A slow, warbled tune like something from an old toy. Notes dragged out of tune, slurring like a broken carousel. The more we get together, together, together. It was coming from across the lot, from inside Unit 41. I froze. My keys were in my hand when I heard it. A voice, low and close. "You forgot something." I spun around so fast I almost fell. Nothing there. Empty pavement. Quiet air. And then I saw it. In my own unit, propped against the far wall, a wooden rocking horse. My knees went weak. I hadn't seen that horse in nearly 30 years. It had a red-painted saddle and one glass eye missing. The mane, just tufts of wool now, and scrawled on the base in jagged carving, "Delaney's room, 1996. That horse was taken from me when I was 6, foster care, after the incident, after the house inspection. CPS called it unsanitary, unsafe, dangerous. I hadn't thought about that in years. Not really. I stepped inside slowly, reached out and touched the wood. The same smooth handle I used to grip when I couldn't sleep. The way it creaked like a sigh. I backed out. I locked the door. I ran to the gate. The keypad beeped, but the gate didn't move. I tried again, and again. Nothing. I called the office, straight to a generic voicemail. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. "I kept it safe for you. Come back." I nearly dropped the phone. I threw the car into reverse and waited until another vehicle pulled up behind me. Their code opened the gate, and I tailgated them out, scraping the mirror on the way. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after that. I didn't sleep well. I kept dreaming of the horse, the music, the plastic sheeting. Finally, I went online. I had to know. I pulled up Iron Gate's website, checked their map, 40 units. My unit, 17, was on the back row. It should have faced a wall. But I'd been looking at Unit 41 for weeks. I zoomed in on the satellite view. There was something there, a narrow strip of shadow, but no doorway, no unit, just asphalt. I called the office again. A man answered. "There's no Unit 41, he said flatly when I asked. I told him what I'd seen. He sighed. "Ma'am, Unit 17 faces the back wall. I've worked here 7 years. That row ends at 40. I've seen it. I've heard it." He was silent for a moment, then hung up. I could have stopped there. Should have. but it felt like something was unfinished, like a thread was still pulling at me. A week later, I drove back, parked across the road, watched through the fence. There it was, a door. Wide, unmarked, slightly open. I started having dreams again. Not just memories, recreations. The rocking horse in the hallway, the freezer humming in the dark. My name whispered from the closet. I called a friend, a contractor. He'd worked on Iron Gate when it was being built. Was there ever a Unit 41, I asked. He chuckled. No, they only permitted 40. Funny thing though, we always joked about dead space. Something in the blueprints never lined up. A wall was too thick, inside longer than outside. Happens when plans get redrawn last minute. Could you hide a room in that kind of space? He was quiet for a second. Sure, but why would anyone? I didn't answer. The next day I went to the zoning office, pulled the original site plans, units 1 through 40, but on one of the older hand-drawn drafts, barely visible under pencil smudges, was a rectangle, opposite Unit 17, a faint number beside it, maybe a 4, maybe a 1. I didn't sleep that night. I knew I had to go back, one last time. I parked farther away this time, cut through the tall grass behind the RV lot, slipped through a hole in the chain-link fence. No cameras back here, no traffic. I crossed the gravel, heart thudding. The music was already playing, slow, familiar. The more we get together. The door was open wider now. I pulled it the rest of the way. Inside, the same plastic sheeting. The freezer, humming steady. And lined up in front of it, items from my life. A broken wristwatch, my 3rd grade library card, a sock puppet named Lou I hadn't seen since I was 7. All laid out like offerings. On the far wall, scrawled in red marker, Delaney's room, forever. I don't remember running, just the cold air in my lungs, the clatter of my shoes on the gravel. I left South Dakota the next week, moved closer to my sister in Denver, sold most of what I owned, got a new phone, new number, never looked back. I haven't stepped inside another storage unit since, but every once in a while, when I'm driving past some forgotten corner of town or an old industrial park, I'll see it again. Just for a second, a beige metal door, wide and slightly open. Some storage units are built to hold our past, others are built to keep it alive. What if your worst memories never left? What if they were just waiting for you to come back? I thought moving back home would fix something. After dropping out of college, I figured I'd reconnect with who I was before everything got off track. Flagstaff had swallowed me whole. Tuition bills, panic attacks, 2 failed majors, a breakup that left me hollow. I came home to Ridge Hill with no plan, no degree, and no clue what came next. But I told myself this was temporary, just until I figured things out. Mom offered me the guest room. Dad pretended to understand. They tiptoed around me like I might shatter. I spent the first few weeks binge-watching reruns and refreshing job listings. Finally landed a night shift cashier job at Ridge Hill Market, the little 24-hour grocery on the edge of town, across from the auto body shop and next to a vape lounge that never had customers. Tom, the store manager, hired me after a 5-minute interview. Said he liked my smile. I didn't smile much after that. Nights at Ridge Hill weren't exciting, but they were easy, steady. I came in at 5, left at midnight. The customers were sparse, regulars mostly. An elderly woman who bought 1 can of soup every night. A guy in a mechanic's uniform who reeked of oil and Mountain Dew. Sometimes teenagers would come in for snacks or cheap wine. Nothing too weird. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry flies overhead. Freezers hummed low behind the aisles. It was all white noise, something to keep me distracted. I cleaned, restocked, stared at the clock. I'd hum songs to myself, sometimes old Billy Joel tunes my dad used to play on road trips. It kept the dread quiet. Carlos, the security guard, sat in his car outside. Always. He never came in. Never moved. He just scrolled through his phone, headlights off, engine idling. I wasn't even sure if he had a radio or any access to the camera feed. By the second week, I'd memorized every aisle, every creaky tile, every corner the light didn't fully reach. I'd made peace with the monotony. At least I didn't owe anyone anything. No exams, no expectations, no boyfriend asking me why I cried in my sleep. Then one Thursday night changed everything. It started like any other. I clocked in at 4:58 p.m., grabbed a mop from the back closet, and started wiping down the floor behind register 2. There was something meditative about it. One square at a time, left to right, rinse, repeat. I was halfway through my rhythm when the bell above the front door gave a soft tinkle. I looked up. A man had just walked in. Tan jacket, ball cap pulled low, no cart, no basket. He didn't glance at the produce or the freezer section or the drinks. He made a beeline to the register I was standing at, like he already knew where to go. He stopped about 6 feet away, just stood there. "Evening," I offered, my voice steady. "Need help finding anything?" He didn't answer, didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on the convex security mirror behind me, that dusty dome in the ceiling corner that reflected most of the store. I noticed a bulge under his jacket. Not big enough to be a weapon, maybe a pack or something, but it made my throat tighten. He shifted slightly, just enough that I could see what he was carrying. A crumpled grocery bag. My stomach turned. He finally spoke, low, slow, measured. "Put everything in, and don't touch the buttons." I froze. The mop slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I stared at him, hoping I'd misheard. "Now," he said again, calm as ever. I opened the drawer. The bills fluttered like dead leaves as my hand shook. Coins, credit slips, coupons, all of it went into the bag. A few 20s slipped from my grip and hit the floor. He didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the mirror and the door. Not me. He stepped in close, too close, and lowered his voice. "You're lucky. You weren't supposed to be on tonight." Then he walked out. No rush, no glance back, just out the door. The bell jingled once more. Then nothing. My hands were still trembling when I looked up and saw Carlos standing just outside the doors, watching the guy walk down the sidewalk like it was nothing. He didn't get out of the car, didn't even turn the lights on. "Register ran out of paper." I lied, voice weak. "Weird," Carlos muttered, then gave me a nod and went back to his post. I locked the doors early, told myself it was just a fluke, a one-off, but something felt wrong, like the air in the store was heavier, off balance. I cleaned the counter like that would fix it, scrubbed the sticky spots until my hands turned red. I didn't even know who to call. My parents would freak. Gwen, my best friend, would tell me to quit on the spot. Eventually, I ducked into the office and called the local police. The dispatcher was polite until I told her the guy had left and nothing had been stolen. She asked if I'd called my manager. I hadn't, so I did. Straight to voicemail. Twice. Later, I learned Tom had left town that day. No warning, no text. 2 nights later, around 2:30 a.m., I got a call from Danny, my co-worker from the day shift. Her voice was choked and shaking. "I saw him," she whispered. "Who?" "That guy. From the market, I swear I saw him. He was standing by the dumpster behind my building, just watching me." I didn't know what to say. "He was wearing a Ridge Hill name tag," she added. "It said Tom." I felt the blood drain from my body. "You're sure?" "I know what I saw." I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. Her words echoed in my head over and over. He was wearing Tom's name. That sentence ruined the silence for me. I couldn't unhear it. It made his last words at the register echo louder. "You weren't supposed to be on tonight." He'd known. Known who was scheduled. Known I wasn't meant to be there. That wasn't random. I drove over to Danny's apartment the next morning. We walked to the dumpster together. Empty. Beer bottles, broken plastic. No footprints. No cameras. Just cold concrete and wind. Tom still didn't return my calls. Every shift after that, I stayed alert. I watched the mirrors, kept bleach under the counter, stocked paper spray in my apron. I started checking the mic line behind the register each night. One day it was cleanly snipped. No fray, no mess. A technician came the next day and said it had been remotely disabled. Manager's clearance, he'd said, like that was normal. The next week crawled. Then one night at 9:10 p.m., the bell above the door chimed again. Tan jacket, ball cap. He came straight to register 2. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. He held out the same grocery bag. Empty it, he said softly. I pressed the panic button under the counter. Nothing happened. No noise, no blinking light. Dead. I filled the bag. Same routine. Then he leaned in again. See? He said. Nothing happens. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Tom's Ridge Hill Market badge. He set it on the counter. He said you'd be here. And just like that, he was gone again. Gwen drove over when I told her. We sat on the front porch of my parents' house for hours. She listened, didn't talk much, just stared at the dark trees across the street like something was watching us from between them. You think Tom's in on it? She asked finally. I don't think he's real anymore, I whispered. The next morning, Danny posted about it online. Said she'd seen the man again. He was standing across from her workplace now, still wearing the Ridge Hill badge, still watching. A woman in the comments claimed she'd seen him outside her office window the week before. I sent Tom a text. Is this about something you're doing? Are you using us? No response. 2 hours later, he finally sent a reply. Stay home tonight. I didn't. I brought a shotgun lock from my dad's closet. Didn't load it. Just kept it under the counter to feel like I had something. I stayed behind register 1 that night. At 9:30, the man returned. He looked the same. Tan jacket, ball cap, calm. I hit the alarm again. Nothing. He walked up and said, "He didn't warn you, huh?" He lifted Tom's badge again, held it like it meant something. "Are you Tom?" I asked. "I am tonight." Then another customer entered behind him. A jogger, sweaty and winded. The man turned and slipped into aisle 4. Gone. By the time the jogger checked out, there was no sign of him. The next day I checked the cameras with Gwen. There was nothing on the feed, no man, no second register activity, just me. Just the jogger. Tom returned 3 days later, dressed clean, calm, confident. I didn't say a word, just held up the badge he left behind. You know who this is, don't you? I asked. He didn't speak, just walked to the office and locked the door. After a minute, I knocked. He let me in. His face looked tired. He sat down. Then he told me everything. The man had been using his credentials, his name, his schedule, his mic access, his remote override permissions. Tom had once been involved years ago when he worked night shifts himself. But he backed out, got promoted, thought it was over. It wasn't. The man kept finding ways in, using store schedules, targeting girls alone, disabling systems through contacts still inside, watching us. Tom said he got arrested outside his own apartment 3 nights ago. Someone called about a man in a Ridge Hill uniform pacing near the alley. No charges stuck, no evidence. Tom quit, or was fired. It doesn't matter. I walked out that night. Never went back. You think you're safe because the systems are there. Panic buttons, cameras, security guards, managers with clean slacks and calm voices. But when those systems fail, when the people you rely on become part of the threat, what do you trust? Do you even know how to listen to your own fear? That's the question I leave with you. When the alarm stays silent, who will you believe? Your manager, your eyes, or the voice in your head that whispers something's not right? And if that voice speaks again, will you listen? There's a certain kind of quiet that only exists in places built to outlast people. Not the comforting kind you find at home when the fridge hums and the dog shifts in his sleep. I'm talking about the hollow quiet, the kind that hangs around fluorescent lights and smells like damp concrete. The kind that creeps in while your jeans tumble dry at 2:37 in the goddamn morning. That was Cedar Spin Laundromat for me. Back then, I was fresh out of a 6-year relationship and out of rent money in the same breath. We lived in a loft apartment in St. Louis. Exposed brick, IKEA shelves, the works, until everything unraveled in the dumb, inevitable way it always does when two people stop seeing each other in the same light. When she left, she took the bed, the books, and most of my future plans. I didn't have the energy to stay in the city. Freelance design isn't exactly reliable income when your chest feels like it's caved in. So I packed up what I could fit in my beat-up Honda and drove 2 hours back to my hometown in central Missouri, tail between my legs. Dad had been gone 4 years, but the house still stood, musty and outdated, stuck in the exact year he died. His aftershave still lingered in the medicine cabinet like he'd just stepped out. I moved into the guest room and told myself it was temporary. The nights were the worst. Small town silence is louder than anything I'd ever heard. You notice the ticking wall clock, the creak of the front porch, the way the pipes sigh at odd hours. I tried everything: melatonin, chamomile tea, white noise machines. But the weight on my chest stayed put, and my mind wouldn't stop running. Eventually, I started driving around at night. Aimless loops through empty streets, trying to outdrive the noise in my head. That's how I ended up at Cedar Spin. Open 24 hours, rows of humming machines and vending snacks that hadn't been rotated since the Obama administration. The warmth of the dryers and the low buzz of lights, it gave my insomnia a rhythm, gave my hands something to do. It became my ritual. I didn't go to see people. Most nights there weren't any. Sometimes a trucker folding his uniforms or a woman in scrubs catching up on laundry after a double shift. But usually, it was just me. Me and the machines. I'd bring a small load just for the excuse. Whites on Wednesdays, jeans on Sundays. It didn't matter. I wasn't there for the laundry. I was there because it was the only place that didn't ask questions. That is, until early October, when everything began to fracture. It started the night I arrived a little later than usual, around 2:35. The air was damp, and the whole parking lot looked washed out under the halogen streetlights. I carried in my basket, socks and 2 pairs of jeans, and picked machine number 6, my usual. I liked it because it didn't rattle like the others. As I was loading the first pair, I noticed a man standing just outside the glass entrance. At first, I didn't really think anything of it. People wander, wait for rides, kill time. But what got me wasn't what he did. It was what he didn't. He didn't move, didn't fidget or pace or lean, just stood there, still as stone, facing inside, facing me. I turned back to my machine, forced myself to keep moving. When I glanced again, he was gone. No footsteps, no door, no motion on the sensors. The hair on my arms stood up. I told myself maybe I'd just missed him walking off, but something about the way he disappeared didn't feel natural. I tried to brush it off, focused on the detergent machine, trying to remember if I had quarters left. That's when I looked up at the wall-mounted security monitor. There I was. Same red hoodie, black leggings, my chipped green phone case propped on the table. Except, on the screen, I was sitting down. In reality, I was still standing. On screen, I watched myself lift my head, turn, like she knew. And I swear to God she looked right at me. I spun around. The folding chairs were empty. My seat was empty. But she was still there on the screen, blinking, waiting. I left everything. Basket, phone, clothes. Walked straight out and didn't stop until I got back to my car, heart pounding so hard I couldn't breathe right. I convinced myself it was a glitch. Maybe the monitor was frozen, maybe it was old footage. My brain wanted a reason. I needed a reason. But the truth was, I didn't believe that. Not really. And that was the worst part. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the night after either. The inside of my eyelids were full of static and blinking fluorescent light. I started doing laundry at home, in the sink, the old-fashioned way. Anything to avoid going back. I soaked my jeans in vinegar like some survivalist freak. 3 days passed. On the 4th, I broke. It was 2:18 a.m. My hands were shaking and my legs ached from pacing. I told myself I'd just drive by, just look from the car, just prove it to myself that I'd imagined it. But I parked, and I got out, and I went back in. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The hum was the same, the flickering buzz of the lights, the cold crackle of the soda machine. I walked toward the back, aiming for a different washer. Machine number 9, far row. I figured maybe switching routines would make it all feel new again. I glanced up at the monitor again, and I stopped cold. I was already there. Screen Me was standing at machine number 9, halfway through loading it. She reached for a towel. I looked down at my hand. Same towel. I hadn't moved yet. I stood there too long, just staring. Then, as if sensing me, she looked up. Our eyes met, hers first, like she knew I'd be watching. I dropped everything and left again, didn't even close the machine lid. I drove home with the radio off, heart slamming against the inside of my ribs. I called Cody as soon as I got in the driveway. We'd been friends since 7th grade, the kind of guy who'd show up to help you move a couch at midnight and only complain a little. He answered after the 3rd ring, groggy and half asleep. "You already told me this," he muttered. "What?" "The laundromat thing. The double. The whatever it was. You said all this last week." My mouth went dry. "Cody, I didn't." "You did." Then he hung up. I just sat there in the driver's seat, clutching my phone.